everybody, and it looks like we're live. This is Roberto Blake of RobertoBlake.com helping you create something awesome today. Welcome to another YouTube live Q&A. This is going to be kind of more of a live training, if you will. I will answer some of your questions, but we're going to be talking once again about click-through rate. If you were not on the last stream on Friday, you might want to go back and watch the replay. It's full of a ton of information. We walk through click-through rates, impressions. We walk through all of that in a huge way. We dived into the components of what this reveals about the YouTube algorithm. So it's a long replay, mostly because of the Q&A at the end. But if you watch through the first 40 minutes of it that is training, you will get a ton out of it. So I would definitely encourage you guys to watch that live stream replay. That live stream replay, it is available on the channel. And I also want to remind you that these YouTube live Q&A sessions with you guys for 90 minutes or more are possible because I am independent of YouTube and ad revenue and things of that nature, which means I have my own revenue stream, and that is through AwesomeCreatorAcademy.com. AwesomeCreatorAcademy.com is my online education platform where I hook you guys up with not only free blogs and a list of the resources I use in my online business ventures, but also we have a monthly mentoring program, private one-on-one coaching with me, 30-minute one-on-one YouTube channel reviews. I also have the YouTube Starter Kit, which we have a discount for you guys in the description down below. That's good to the end of April. You guys can get 20 bucks off with that code. We also have the formula for awesome videos, which is still 50% off until the end of the month, which is the guide that I wish I had had when I was making YouTube videos because they would have sucked less. I wouldn't have been awkward on camera. I would have known what settings to use, what gear to buy, and I would have had a system for producing quality and quantity content instead of bumbling through it for the first 100 videos, which were pretty much god-awful. But everyone starts at zero. So if you guys want to check out all of the great resources, including some coupons and links in the resource section or the free blogs, or if you want to buy any of the products that definitely help support the channel and me, definitely check out AwesomeCreatorAcademy.com. We'd also love some feedback and to find out what other things you guys want. I've been hearing rumblings that some of you want a getting started guide for Instagram. We might do that as a free guide, but then we might make something very similar to the YouTube Starter Kit for Instagram and Instagram stories for you guys. Don't forget, we also have the free YouTube analytics training. You have to sign up for that via email. So all that stuff is available at AwesomeCreatorAcademy.com, as well as the free blogs with some of my best info. So today, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to actually take you guys into Photoshop with me. I'm going to answer some of your questions, but I know Canva is free. I know PicMonkey is free. I know there are a lot of free tools out there, but to be honest with you, if you want to do great YouTube thumbnails that get really great click-through rates, and click-through rates are the big thing that we're talking about for a while now on YouTube, now that they've released the information on impressions and click-through rates, it's made it abundantly clear that if you want to grow your YouTube channel, yeah, better video quality and camera equipment, that can certainly help. Better editing will help. But if you want to grow your YouTube channel fast, and all of you keep saying you want to grow your YouTube channel fast, clearly getting clicks and thumbnails, which we've all said is obvious, is the answer. But I think these stats that we see when it comes to this in YouTube, and I'm going to pull this up for you guys. When we see like what YouTube tells us for analytics impression data, it makes it really obvious. It makes it very clear that when you want to grow on YouTube, when you want to reach people, impressions absolutely matter. Impressions absolutely matter. And getting those unique viewers is what's going to convert to subscribers. YouTube is not trying to hurt small YouTubers because we've seen that with the impressions data. Now we know how YouTube puts content in front of an audience, and we now know it's our responsibility to get clicks. And to get those clicks, especially those initial clicks when the video comes out, you have to have an interesting and compelling title and thumbnail. I cannot stress this enough. And it's making it very obvious that that's where we're going to get clicks. That's where we're going to get unique viewers. That's where we're going to get watch time. It's where everything is going to happen for us. Starts with that thumbnail that YouTube is putting in front of people, that title and thumbnail that says, I'm interested in that or I'm not. I'm going to click on that or I'm not. It is binary. It is a yes or it is a no. And you need more people to say yes to you. And how are you going to do that? It's the thumbnail. It's gonna be the thumbnail. So we know that. YouTubers like PewDiePie have said this for years. He's the biggest YouTuber. He said that his advantage in Photoshop was what helped him break out and get started. And you guys see a lot of channels, big or small, that grow very quickly, often have really compelling titles and thumbnails. And it's not always clickbait. It's just a matter of doing something interesting enough and that looks better than the other things that are showing up on someone's homepage or the other things showing up in your niche. It is probably faster to update your thumbnails and make those better and get more clicks than it is to say that you're going to try to improve the video quality, save up for a nicer camera, learn to be a better editor. All of that's important, but the fastest way to improve the data around your channel is to get more clicks so that you get more viewers, more watch time, and more potential subscribers. So that's what we're going to focus on in today's Q&A. That's what we're going to focus on in today's training. It's going to be all about using Photoshop for YouTube, and I'm going to show you guys how I put together thumbnails. I'm going to open up Photoshop, and I'm going to like break down some of my thumbnails. I'm going to show you some of the things from the YouTube Starter Kit. I'm going to show you some of the things like my end cards. So we're going to really be drilling down into like how to make stuff that is, you know, on brand for you and looks good, how to put together some of these things in Photoshop. And you can see, you know, that I put in the work to have quality thumbnails. And there's a lot of bits and pieces to that. There's a process to this. And those thumbnails make a big difference, you know, for your channel. They are the gateway to views and to watch time and thus to subscribers. And there are a couple of components that you have to kind of unpack when you think about, well, what makes a good thumbnail. Let's go back over to YouTube Analytics real quick, because I want to show you something. So this is the YouTube Studio Beta. And what we're looking at when you see this is you're looking at thumbnails, and some of these are unlisted videos because I was testing a live stream thing. But I try to put effort into my thumbnails wherever I can. But one of the things I'm always thinking about is how small these thumbnails look when they're on somebody's phone, when they're on a mobile device, because about 50 to 60% of views are coming from mobile now, and that's going to always grow. So when I think about, you know, my videos, I'm constantly making thumbnails that will look good even when they're small and will be noticeable. And you'll see that there's a couple of elements to that. Part of it is making sure that the text is something that might be able to stand out or be read even when something is small, using color combinations that get contrast and attention, and using interesting poses, you know, physically, or making faces to convey something. Sometimes I don't use text. Sometimes I use a photo. In this case, with the why I took a break from YouTube, the way that I did that title and the way that I did that pose makes it interesting, or it has a little bit of a sense of foreboding of like, oh, is he quitting or did something bad happen? It's like it triggers curiosity. Those things are important factors. Sometimes it's the content or the type of content itself or the title, but a lot of times if it's not the type of content itself or something that people would be looking for, it will be the thumbnail that carries so much weight in what happens to this video. And so there are a lot of factors that play a role in that, and they can make or break a video in terms of whether it's successful or not, whether it gets views or not. And so, yes, there are people out there who do crappy thumbnails and they still get views. The answer is you're not them. So I would say that the answer is to not try to get out of work. I think when people bring up, well, so-and-so did crappy thumbnails and they still succeed on YouTube, or so-and-so didn't optimize their videos for the algorithm and they succeed on YouTube, I feel like that's people talking themselves out of work. I think people are trying to find an excuse to justify being lazy or not trying harder, when the answer is always work harder. If you want to be successful, you always work harder and smarter but it's both. You don't just work smarter and then not improve or do like, you know, and just build a system and then put the least amount of effort in, because if someone has the same system and they work harder than you, you're done. If somebody, you're working so hard and they're working almost as hard but way smarter, you're done. So the answer is, if you want to be competitive, then be competitive. Work harder and work smarter than anybody else. Be efficient, but also be aggressive. Be aggressive. So like, I mean, that's a real thing. So don't talk yourself out of work. You know, don't talk yourself out of work. So you can kind of see some of the stuff I got going on there. Let's go back over to Photoshop. And by the way, if you don't have Photoshop, then you can use photop.com. And here's something else I'm going to try to do here. I'm going to try to move, let me see what I can do about, I'm going to try something here. What I'm going to do is, and I don't know if I'll be able to do this 100% successfully, but I'm going to try to see if I can get my talking head somewhat out of the way for you guys, or set something up where you can see more of my screen. So just bear with me on that, because I'm going to try and see if I can put something together for you guys where you can just see more of my Photoshop screen. So just give me one quick second here while I set that up for you, because I want you to just kind of be able to get a better grasp of like what's going on. All right, so let's do that. And I'm also going to look at some of the questions you guys have in live here. But mostly what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up this scene for you guys so that you can see and hear me, and or at least so you can see my screen and so you can hear what's going on with me. So I'm just going to choose the microphone here. That should be working. All right, so let's try my screen capture scene. What's going to happen is my talking head is going to go away and you're going to see the full Photoshop screen, because that's going to be what's most helpful to you guys. So you should be able to hear me loud and clear, and you should also at the same time be seeing my screen, and I believe you are, so that's cool. So let's see here. All right, so yep, we know that that's working. Awesome. So before I get too heavily into the Photoshop stuff, let me take a look at this super chat and let me see if I can answer some of your questions here. Buzzcuts asks, how do you feel about thumbnails that use negative space in a thoughtful and creative way? Yay or nay? I know background color varies by platform, but it could also be hit or miss. If you use negative space in a creative way, like diagonals, like kind of almost like a die cut or something, then that could be cool and that could stand out. So I think that that's important. Zenix says, YouTube is too competitive now. It's too late now. Too many people are trying to get in. You know what? When Apple went into the smartphone market, you could have said the same thing. So if that's your attitude, Zenix, then you shouldn't be on the stream. You're a glass half empty person. Maybe you should quit. If you believe that it's impossible to win on YouTube, don't play. Go play in Snapchat. If that still exists, go play in Instagram. Go play on some other platform that isn't saturated, that won't be funded, and will die in 2 years, and see what you can get out of it. I don't know. If the answer is that you think that YouTube is too saturated or it's too hard, then don't cry to me about it. Because YouTube was saturated last year when Peter McKinnon went from 0 to almost 2 million in the last 12 months, so I don't want to freaking hear it. I'm not going to sit here and baby you if you want to cry about the market being saturated. Because you know what's not saturated in YouTube? Quality. YouTube's competitive. YouTube has a lot of stuff, and you know how much it has that's quality? Not a lot, my friend. Not a lot. You want to say YouTube's saturated? It's not saturated with quality. That's just the truth. There are 50 million people actively uploading to YouTube. 500, 600 have a diamond play button, which a lot of that's also not just the Jake Pauls of the world. It's the WW freaking E, right? So it's at the top is plenty of room. You know what? There's not a YouTube channel. We just got a tech YouTube channel, Unbox Therapy with Lou. He just hit 10 million, and he's the first tech channel to do it. Marquez will be there shortly. There's still plenty of room. You know what there isn't a million subscribers to right now? There's not a sewing channel with 1 million subscribers yet, and there's more than 1 million people that are interested in sewing in the world. I guarantee you that. There's more than 1 million people in the United States and the UK with an interest in sewing, or Australia or whatever. So there's that. There are very few DIY channels with 1 million subscribers. Laura DIY is only one of, like, I think 6 or so that are up there in the multi-millions of subscribers. So there's still plenty of room. YouTube's top is saturated with a lot of gaming channels, a lot of channels that are defunct or just old school YouTubers that aren't really growing so much anymore, but keep a very loyal, passionate fan base from back in the day. I'm one of the people in their community, a lot of those older YouTubers. There's a lot of dead channels with 100,000 plus that don't even upload, haven't uploaded in years. So, like, to say that YouTube is saturated and you can't grow anymore, what about Kavos? Kavos is one of the youngest commentators in the YouTube community, and he's at like 800 plus thousand as a YouTube commentator. His production values are better than Keemstar's. Okay, so I don't want to hear it. I'm not interested in whining. I think that those kind of excuses are for people who don't want to say that the reality is that they're not passionate enough, or they don't have the talent. And that sounds harsh and that sounds really aggressive, but I'm not in excuses mode today and everything like that. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with the content lately. I'm really done with people's excuses. It sounds impatient. It might feel like it's aggressive or arrogant to some of you, but the reality is that I'm seeing people win every day, and I'm helping people win every day, and I'm tired of people who complain. I am just fed up with it. It's too much negativity. I'm in this very zen mode place where I'm tired of the negativity, and I'm tired of people coming into my live streams, people coming into my YouTube advice videos, or even my entrepreneur videos, and telling me about all the reasons they can't do something, when all they need is one execution as to why they can. One execution as to when they can. That's it. That's it. So, I mean, it's like, oh, easy for you to say at 300,000. You know what? I was looking through the, Wayback Machine, archive.org, and it's a funny thing. 5 years ago, Gary Vaynerchuk, who was still at the time a 3-time best-selling author, millionaire investor, had a million followers on Twitter, still was 5 years ago at 10,000 subscribers, and in a year, he still had to hustle for a whole year to get to 30,000. And then the Ask Gary Vee show, it took a year for that to cross 100K with that, and it still only is in the last 2 years of YouTube that he blew up, and he already had 700 videos over the course of like 7 or 8 years prior. And it wasn't until much later. I mean, you guys are crying. Think about this. 700 videos, 8 years, and 1 million Twitter followers, and you're at 10,000 subscribers. Like, think about that real quick. Okay? And then do another 1,000 videos to get to 1 million over the course of 5 years. The reason that people are saying that it's impossible is because they don't have the stomach for that. But I digress. Aston Regis, The Flip Side, $19 UK Super Chat. Appreciate you, buddy. Hey Roberto, been changing my thumbnails in Photoshop based on your advice. If you could, would appreciate your opinion on them. If we have time in the live stream after I walk through some tutorial stuff, we'll try. We'll see. There's an echo on the Photoshop screen. I'll see what I can do about figuring that one out. I will see what I can do about figuring out the echo on the Photoshop screen, because there shouldn't be. All right, so I think when I do the Photoshop screen, I think there won't be an echo. Actually, let's try it now. What about now? What about now? What about now? Can you guys hear the audio now? And is there an echo or no? Audio's back but no echo, or is it good audio? Good audio, or you can hear me, but is the audio good? Just want to, okay. Audio's good? Yes? All right, thank you. All right, so we've got that up and running. No echo? Fantastic, cool. Yeah, that's the thing with live streams is you have to, with live streams, you gotta, you know, you gotta make sure that everything is right. General Musician says, how does the algo handle a large channel that hasn't uploaded in years? It evaluates it on a video by video basis. It does it on a video by video basis. All right, so let's get into the Photoshop side. Yabi Addison, I'll check and see if I found your email. Yep, so Haunted Road Media. This is actually perfect timing since I'm about to work on my thumbnail for tonight's video. Needs something creepy but cool. All right, yep, that's pretty dope. So we're going to go into like, and I don't love getting into those rants. I think you guys enjoy those rants more than me. But we're going to go into Photoshop here, and I'm going to show you guys some stuff because the design part of YouTube is neglected. It's massively neglected. We're actually trying to put together a panel to talk about this over at VidCon this year. And you'll notice that, yeah, I have a lot of custom assets for my YouTube thumbnails and end cards and things. This is an end card, but the thing is, if you think about it, even if I have a bunch of these custom assets, it's not like you couldn't make something of this yourself. It's not like you couldn't figure that out, and it's not like it's something that's that extravagant. I mean, you could pay an artist, you can go into Upwork like I usually do, or hire someone on Instagram, or if you're on a budget, I guess you could get somebody on Fiverr, even though I hate Fiverr with every freaking fiber of my being. I despise it because people on Fiverr try to steal my work and pass it off as their own. So I hold a grudge against Fiverr because they don't kick people off who do that. They just steal my work. And Fiverr says okay. But I mean, if you're gonna hire voice actors, I guess Fiverr's all right. But I can't stand the design community in Fiverr because of the thieves. But anyway, I digress. My point is, you can make something like this. I'm gonna show you even how. Obviously, the easy way to do all of this is to buy the YouTube starter kit with the discount code in the description and be able to build something on top of a template instead of from scratch. But I'll show you how building from scratch works. So I'm going to walk you through some of the design principles behind building a YouTube thumbnail, a YouTube end card, all of those things. So let's start with something you guys are less familiar with. Let's start with something that might be a little simpler to do. Let's start with the YouTube end cards, just because I think that a lot of you don't even know how to design a custom YouTube end card. So we're doing this with a blank canvas here in Photoshop. If you don't have Photoshop, you can use photop.com, which is basically free Photoshop. For speed while recording here, and because I don't want to bog down my internet bandwidth, I'm not using photop.com because it's browser based. So since it's a web browser, it would take up more of the resources than just doing it this way, to be honest. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick what I think is a good color, or in this case, a good color palette. I think I'm going to probably do something with, let's just go with green, because that'll be different and that'll be interesting. And so I'm just going to fill this background with green as a place to start, because I don't necessarily know what I'm going to do. I'm going to unlock this layer, which is just holding down Alt, which probably be option for you if you're on Mac, and then just double clicking the layer. You could also go to layer and then go to layer unlock, whatever, or you could right click on it. But I just wanted a green background as a starting point to build out a YouTube end card. Okay. Now, there are a couple of things I can do now. I could go to effects and I could just pick a gradient, and I could pick the overlay blend mode, which is pretty standard. And then something you guys don't know about Photoshop is, in this case, I have it radial so that I can put kind of the spotlight on something. I could just click with the move tool, and I could drag that gradient around, and it changes, and that makes it a little bit more interesting. So I could kind of put this like almost in the corner here, and that's kind of interesting. Or I could put it over here. A lot of people like to put it in the center. I like to give it something to focus on, so I'm going to kind of put it over here in the corner for now. And I'm just going to hit OK, because that gives me something to work with. So I have that for the beginnings of the foundation of my end card. Now, there's a couple of things I need to go ahead and do. I need to make a rectangle, and I need one that will basically be the shape that I need to put a YouTube video, which is going to have, a 16 by 19 aspect ratio. So by clicking here, I could just go and I could tell this that I want something to be 1600 by 900, and I said 16 by 9, I think, or did I say 16 by 19? I meant 16 by 9, but I'll just go 600 pixels by 900 pixels and tell it that I want that. And so now I have something 1600 pixels by 19 pixels. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to drag one of the corners, and that keeps the proportions correct. So what I know by doing this is that this will be the size of a video. It'll be that 16 by 19 aspect ratio. Now, if that wasn't going to work, and I can also select here, and I can put a white border on it, and I can decide the size of that border. But let's say I wasn't 100% sure that that was going to work. What I could do is I could just go here, and I could just size it to be roughly the same size, locking to the corners, as my thumbnail, because I know my thumbnail is the size of a YouTube video. I know that it's 1920 by 1080, which is full HD. I always make it bigger. YouTube says you could do 1280 by 720, but I always make it bigger just so the quality is a little better. And then I could hold shift, drag to the corner, and I could just scale that down because I know that that's the correct size. So that's all I really need to do here, and I can get the correct size for an end card. Now, on my end card, I have these grid lines because I've marked the safety zones that I know exist for a YouTube end card, because I screenshotted the YouTube end cards at the end of a YouTube video to know where my borders are for safety. But I can kind of more or less eyeball that here and be okay, because I know that if I go about roughly at least 100 pixels in over here, and if I go at least down to 300 over here from the top, that I'm safe. So I can relatively kind of eyeball that, relatively speaking, and say that, what, proportionately, this is probably fine. So again, even if you don't do an exact measurement or screenshot, you could just kind of eyeball it and you'll be okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to hold down Alt, click on this square, and I'm going to drag it across. And what that does is it creates a duplicate. And if I go over to my layers, I've got these two duplicate shapes here. Now I'm going to want to change these so that I can see a little bit better and so that I can make those stand out, because the color they are doesn't really matter. The color doesn't matter because we're going to cover these with YouTube videos in the end, but just to make life simpler, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make them gray like this. Because that's, again, it's just going to make life easier on me to be able to do it that way. And I'm using partly my existing YouTube end card here as a point of reference. And we can zoom in, zoom out, whatever we want to do. So this is making that YouTube end card. And again, if I want this to be closer or be different, if I want to leave room over here for something, I absolutely can. One of the things I could put over here is I could put a circle that I know will be a subscribe. So I could get the ellipse tool and I can just make a circle, and I can just hold shift and alt, and I can make a circle, and I can know that I can put a subscribe button right here. So all of a sudden, this is actually looking pretty good in terms of something basic that I can do for a YouTube end card. And I still have some more like options for this YouTube end card if I want to make it slightly fancy like this one. The only thing I would really need to do at this point to make this a great generic template for a YouTube end card is add some kind of image or something going on here in the background. Now, if you want to be super fancy, you could animate this, and that would look pretty dope. Or you could put a video behind it or something. But in some cases, I think that's just going a little bit too far, to be honest with you. And that's a lot of work for a beginner. So what I would go for in this case is I would pick an interesting photo, probably a stock photo. And I've got tons, and you could use your own photography. You could do all kinds of things with this. In my case, I like to use images from things like Adobe stock, and also from storyblocks.com. They used to be graphic stock and audio blocks and things like that. But I like to use Adobe. Now, there are also some free stock photo websites out there, but I just feel like the better quality stuff typically comes from Adobe and places like that. So I use Adobe stock. Here is an example of something that actually works out pretty well when you want to add just a little bit of something nice to an image like this. I'm going to drag over this bokeh effect, which by itself is actually like, not bad, but we're going to blend this into our image by choosing a different blend mode up here called soft light. And you can see what that does. And if I don't like that, I could always use overlay, which actually looks pretty dope. I could change the opacity on this if I wanted to. And if I don't like how that looks, I can just disable that and say, like, let me try something else. Maybe there's something that looks a little bit nicer or fits here. So I could try and create something similar to what I have with the whole play button effect, or with people or anything like that. And I could just drag this until it starts to look about right. And then what I would do here is I can reduce the opacity or the fill until that starts to work. I can use different effects. I can see how multiply looks. Multiply is actually working out pretty good in this. I could try and see if screen looks nice. Screen doesn't look bad. And so I could adjust these different blend modes and see if I like that. If I don't, then I could use a whole different effect. There are any number of stock photos that I could put in here that could work and look really good with this, just depending on what my channel is about or what I wanted to do. Let's say that I had a gaming channel. Okay. I could use this image. I can change this background from green to something else. Let's say I want to use something that fits a little bit better with this whole image. I could just go ahead and I could use my eyedropper. Let me grab this blue and see if that looks better. And then what I'll do is I'll pick this layer and we'll change the blend mode to screen. That actually doesn't look too bad. We could also go ahead and we can change our ellipse, our circle. So we'll call this subscribe. And we can click on this. We'll double click here on the shape and we'll change that to, blue or yellow, even though it doesn't matter because we're going to end up covering it up anyway with our subscribe button. But if you wanted to just kind of understand where some things are, you could even change the fill on these while keeping the stroke, and you could change this to 50 or 60% opacity just to kind of see where things are in the background if you wanted to change the position. So this would let us make a somewhat fancy end screen. We could put text down here if we wanted to. We could put our social media icons. We could really do almost anything with this, and we could also position these completely differently if we wanted to. We could go ahead and we could move these down if we felt like being able to put this closer to the center made sense for whatever reason. We could do that if we just feel like we wanted to show off more of this background, and then that's where we could put our videos. To watch the next video, we could put some text under here, like for example we could tell them watch previous video. And what we'll have to do is, I'm using the shortcut commands for this, by the way, to make this just go faster. I have some Photoshop tutorials on this channel, by the way. You might want to check those out. Instead of just watching YouTube advice videos, you could probably benefit from watching my software tutorials where I teach you how to edit sound in Adobe Audition, edit graphics like this in Adobe Photoshop, edit your videos in Adobe Premiere Pro. This is not a YouTube advice channel. There's a lot of stuff on this channel. But here we're going to go, and I have a great drop shadow effect already, so that we just use that. And then if I want more text, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten up this text box a little bit. And you're going to see why, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this text box, I'm going to hit Alt, I'm going to drag this over, line it up, and then boom, I've got another copy of this. And instead of saying watch previous video, I can put YouTube suggest. If I need 2 G's, or I could put YouTube recommends, and boom. And so you see, I've got a pretty sweet YouTube gaming thumbnail set up here. And again, we really don't need this to be yellow. This could be gray. I don't care. And so this is where people would subscribe, since we know that ends up being a circle. This ends up being watch previous video. And I would just export this. I would just save this for web, and we have a YouTube end card. This actually is a pretty good gaming style YouTube end card. And I could actually probably, and I probably will after this, I could make this part of the YouTube starter kit, and I could go ahead and I could give you guys this in the YouTube starter kit as one of the end cards, and just add it to the end cards graphics packs, which I think I'll definitely do. I think I'll make a few things here, and they might end up being, you know, part of the YouTube starter kit. So you see how this ends up being something pretty dope that you can make in like 5 minutes on your own if you're not walking people through it step by step. And it actually looks pretty awesome in terms of if you had a gaming channel. So I'm going to show you guys how to do thumbnails from scratch like that and some other things. But did you guys like being walked through the process of making something like that and thinking of something like that in terms of being able to make your own custom end card for, you know, YouTube channel? Obviously, you can make this a little bit more fancy. You can find some graphics for, you know, arrows, or you can draw those by hand if you want. But what did you guys think of that? What did you guys think of being able to custom design your own YouTube end card and know that it could look good like this? And you saw that I didn't use a lot of material to do that. Someone's asking, can you make it on an iPad? It's not that easy given some of the apps on the iPad. It depends on what app you have. It might be easier or harder, and also what resources you have in terms of photos and images that you can have on your iPad. So that could be more challenging. But that was easy to follow along with, right? And then I said, like, you can use photop.com, and that would give you basically the same tools as Photoshop, but in your web browser, and it's free. So you could do that, or you could use GIMP, you can use Pixlr. So, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Erica Robin is saying, can you talk about the theory in YouTube, like aesthetically appealing and photography rule of thirds, etc.? There is some stuff to that. The problem with design in YouTube is that YouTube uses the top left-hand upper corner and the bottom right-hand corner for themselves. And so graphic designers and photographers, because we're prioritizing left to right, top to bottom, we forget that apps do that too. So they're taking that real estate for themselves. So we have to do the opposite. So, you know, that becomes an issue. And Team Autism Media says it doesn't look as hard as it seems to make. It doesn't, but you have to remember that I have experience, and I was a graphic designer for a living pre-YouTube and pre-entrepreneurship. I was a graphic designer for a living. I lived in Photoshop. I've lived in Photoshop every day since I was 14 years old, and I'm about to be 34. I have 20 years of living in Photoshop every day. So there is you know, something to think about with that. If you are an artist and you are a designer, you can make some of your own custom assets, or you can commission them. And that really helps you jazz things up, like how I have Mini Roberto with the silver play button to hold up, and I have those other things. So what I want to do is I want to teach you how to make these Photoshop assets, whether you have those materials or not, because in this case, all I needed was a good stock photo. And if I didn't have the stock photo that we just did, here's the thing. If I'm a gamer, I have all this stuff laying around. You could be making your own cool stock photos and backgrounds to help with your YouTube thumbnails, your YouTube channel artwork, all of those things. Now, obviously, afterward, you'd have to take this into your video editing program, drag it out to a duration of about anywhere from 15 to 20 seconds, and that would really help you with, like, you have to go into your program, because the other thing is people don't know how to make these things, but they also don't realize that you have to take this into your video editing program, and that's the kicker. So, that's the thing. Someone's asking, can you give advice on contrasting, what color palettes to stay away from? Here's a trick for color theory when it comes to YouTube and social media and graphics. Look at sports teams and take the color combinations from sports teams and from existing brands. If you use the color combinations from sports teams and existing brands, you can't go wrong, because someone already did millions of dollars of research. Basketball is the perfect example. Christian Sandoval, yep, basketball. You knew exactly where I was going. So when it comes to color theory, I would pick things like, I would go ahead and pick my team, the Knicks. The Knicks, I could go with orange and blue. So boom, I could do that. I could go with the Bulls. I could go red and white, which is also the Atlanta Falcons, which is now where I live. So there's that. In terms of fonts, let's take a look at like one of my thumbnails here. So you can see what I did here is pretty straightforward. Even if we look at the layers, this isn't that complicated. So what I did was, there's a color wash over a stock image that I also put a black and white filter on, because it just would be silly not to at this point. Now, I could have even went with this, but I just feel like that'd be hard to read. But watch this. I could have made this. I could have went a different direction. This might have even been the better option. I might still update this, because I can update a thumbnail after the fact. Why not? Watch this. I just changed the colors of this real quickly. And then, if I wanted to change this one, maybe I make it yellow so it still stands out. And all of a sudden, this is a completely different image than it was just 2 minutes ago. This would also work. And again, that may or may not be better. So these are things that you can easily do, and all of a sudden, oh wow, it's a different image. Instead of this, like I said, the combinations of blue and orange, blue and yellow, because we learned that from sports teams. Watch this. I take this color, I change the background, all of a sudden, this is a completely different image. And it does kind of work, because we've got the orange and we've got yellow, which still stands out here. We could even still turn this back to white if we want this to be different. Turn that to white. That stands out as a secondary color there. And all of a sudden, this matches. If I don't like this orange and I want it to be closer to what's in the t-shirt, no problem. I go into Photoshop, I pick this right here, and I feel like, okay, that's not orange enough, it's too red. That's too light, that feels like a peach. So all of a sudden, I can just go in and I can start to mess around until I feel I have the right orange, or maybe it's not orange, maybe to complement it, it ends up being yellow instead of orange. Again, this is the New York Knicks style kind of colors, but it may not work. So I don't have to be beholden to that. I could just go with this, and all of a sudden, I've got that nice goldenrod yellow against that blue, which I believe is the Denver Nuggets color palette. And boom, all of a sudden, and see, the thing is, from a typography standpoint, if I wanted this to be a little better, I would bring this closer to being lined up with the end of the E over there. So again, I literally might replace this YouTube thumbnail now that I've redone it, because I think that this is better and would get more clicks. And I could always A/B test it. Beanie Draw says, is it true that you shouldn't, let's move over to Q&A just for a little bit while I teach you guys thumbnail theory, but I'll answer a couple of questions along the way. Is it true that you shouldn't update a thumbnail of a video if it's performing really well, that it messes up the metadata? It doesn't mess up the metadata. It does mess up how people are responding, because if they like a video and it's doing well, why change the thumbnail if it's doing well? If it's not performing, updating the thumbnail could be better. So that, I think, is important. Passport King says, what's the smallest font I would use? I just try to make it as legible as possible, and I often will minimize it to see, well, what would it look like? So primary example, if I make this super small, what becomes readable there? Because this is about what it would look like on a phone, right? At least Start a Side Hustle still looks good. So I have to go pretty big on the font for it to be readable at a small size. So just kind of keep that in mind. And this means like you might need to go with 250 points or higher in terms of font size if you want to measure it that way. I don't know what that would be in pixels because I use points because graphic designer. But I would say that updating thumbnails doesn't mess up impressions unless it's a worse thumbnail or unless it was already working. So, like, that is something that I think matters. What fonts do you use? It depends. There are different fonts that work for different people, and everybody has their own style. I use sans serif fonts, and I use a few different ones. You should use the fonts that you think match your style. You shouldn't try to use the fonts just because I use them. But here's the thing. In the YouTube Starter Kit, if you want to check that out at awesomecreatoracademy.com, I actually include a list of 100 fonts that are free, and I make them accessible. I give you guys the links. So in the YouTube Starter Kit, you're getting a couple of things. Not only are you getting a ton of YouTube thumbnails, you're getting like 160 plus downloads, you're getting access to 100 free fonts, you get 100 free ideas for your YouTube videos, you even get some Canva assets, but I give you guys not only all of these templates to customize your own YouTube stuff in Photoshop, GIMP, or if you need the free stuff, photop.com, and there's even some stuff compatible with Canva, but I also give you access to a lot of fonts that I found for free on free websites that you can use to spice up your YouTube graphics. So you'll get thumbnails, you'll get channel artwork, you'll get end card templates, but you'll also get these cool fonts and access to those, as well as like list of like graphic sites and things of that nature. So there's a ton of resources. The YouTube Starter Kit is usually $99. There is a discount code that is good until the end of April. In my latest video, I have a new discount code out as well. So if you guys look in the descriptions, I have all kinds of goodies in the description for you guys sometimes of these videos. But over on awesomecreatoracademy.com, link in the description, you can get the YouTube Starter Kit, and you'll get a lot of thumbnails that can help you make some really cool custom stuff, because not all of you are going to be Photoshop wizards. Even if I'm showing you how to do it, not all of you will be Photoshop wizards. And that's perfectly fine, by the way. You don't have to be a Photoshop wizard. But you can use the templates that I've already put together in order, and I keep adding some new ones to get started, because you might not be able to work with a blank canvas the way I do and just come up with something. It might be more difficult for you than that, and it's easier to just have this half done and to drop in your photos, your text, change your colors, and call it a day. Or at least you'll understand how I did something if you're trying to do it yourself, because you'll see the layer files and be able to do something a little bit better. So all of that's at awesomecreatoracademy.com. You have a link in the description with a discount coupon for the YouTube Starter Kit. So yeah, I mean, that analyzes kind of the breakdown, because someone asked about color theory. And so with this, you have a great color combination. It's better than what I had before. And you also have good type, balance, layout. I mean, if we did go into crop mode, and let's go with rule of thirds, crop mode. I don't think you guys can visually see this on your end. But when you go into crop mode, it gives you rule of thirds, and you can kind of see where that is on the grid. But I don't really worry about it too much because I just mentally kind of superimpose that. But the idea here is that if I were to split this into, you know, a grid of roughly rule of thirds, and I'm just eyeballing this will not be precise in any way, shape, or form. But if I were to split this up, what you see here is you see that there's visual balance in this grid that I just made. If you look at the grid that I just made, you can get a sense for the visual balance. You can, you know, kind of, I hope you guys can see this because I'm not sure how much of this shows up on your screen versus on my screen. But the idea here is that if you chop this up into a grid with 9 equal parts, that there's something represented or some visual balance to these 9 parts, the rule of thirds. So that's the simple explanation. I'll do a video about the rule of thirds at some other point. But again, even if you understand color theory, even if you understand the rule of thirds, a good application of the rule of thirds, a good application of color theory, that requires skill and time and expertise and study and looking at it being done well and being able to do that yourself. Now in this case, we worked with a thumbnail that I already had. Like, let's see, let's make something new here. Let's go ahead and in Photoshop make another 1920 by 1080. And like I said, you could make these 1280 by 720, but it doesn't save that much space on your computer. And I just like having the better resolution file. So just to help with layout, I'm just going to kind of eyeball a rule of thirds grid here just by sight. And I'm not going to agonize over it because I just want to move this along. Like, I just want to like get through this so I can get to the punchline of making a cool thumbnail for you guys. But so we've got that. Okay, cool. I don't like working on a white background. I need at least a equivalent of a like 50% gray background so that I have something that I can kind of see and wrap my head around a little bit better. Let's do that. All right, so yeah, that's close enough. Now I know that in this case, if I'm going to design something quote unquote from scratch, I need depth, I need layers, I need visual interest. I also know that I'm going to have to figure out what I'm doing in terms of text. So if I go and I look at something that I want to almost like recreate possibly, or a variant of from, say, something like the YouTube starter kit, let's do something that's like, at least like, maybe not super complicated, maybe not super difficult, but like something reasonably challenging that you guys probably don't know how to do on your own. Maybe something like this. Okay. Or even something like this. I can do that relatively easily. So let's go into Photoshop and let's go ahead, just to make life easy, we'll pick black and we'll go to the pen tool and we're going to make a custom shape. So we're going to go, not here, we're going to go to the pen tool. This isn't going to be set the path, it's going to be set the shape. And I'm going to do something that's going to go up until about here that you guys may be familiar with. Now I'm holding shift to make hard straight lines for these corners. And I'm not going to make a square. That's the thing about it. I'm not going to make a square. What I'm going to make is I'm going to make something that has these somewhat jagged edges to it. I'm going to create a new grid line to help me as somewhat of a guide for what I'm going to be trying to do here. So this grid line here is representing kind of my normal or my neutral area. And then this other grid line is representing as far as I can go. So these don't have to be, especially for the sake of time, the way I'm doing it. They don't have to match or be exactly perfect or even. I'm just making sure that they at least line up in some meaningful way. And, you know, I could, with the line here, I don't have to hold shift all the time. I could eyeball it and that might even turn out better. But I'm making a shape and I can actually reuse this shape. And I've made this for you in the YouTube Starter Kit as a standalone asset, as a PNG, and I think as a PSD, so that you can grab this shape and you can use it in anything that you want to if you have the YouTube Starter Kit. So I just made kind of this, like, you know, jagged shape thing. And the beauty of it is, if I want to edit or change some of these triangles, or I wanted it to like look better, I could actually adjust it. I could delete anchor points. I could do all of that, and I could make this cleaner. But this is just an example of something that you can do, because like I can shift these around and you can see how it actually changes them. So, you know, if I wanted this absolutely to be perfect or even, you know, I could do that if I wanted to be neurotic. But I'm just trying to show you guys something that's possible. And because I made this, and I made it in this way, and it's a shape, I can change the color at will. So I can change the color at will. That's pretty dope. Now, I'm going to delete this real quick because, again, I was just making a point and I don't love how that looks per se. But here's another very practical shape I can make that will make sense. So, whoops. And I'll adjust that later. Alright, so I think you guys kind of get what I just did, and I can make this a little bigger so I don't have to worry about it hitting there exact. I can overlap that because Photoshop will cut it off where I need to, but I just made this shape, which I can change to any color. In this case, I'm going to change it to purple. I can give it an outline, by the way. Actually, I just go to shape, and that's where I can give it an outline. And we'll just choose this nice blue here. All right, so that looks pretty dope. And then this background, I can make this whatever I want. In this case, what do I want? Maybe we'll use this blue. Now, I've got this shape, and that's actually working for me, but that seems a little bit plain. There's a couple of things I can do. For one thing, I can create a drop shadow. And by creating this drop shadow, it actually stands off against this, and that looks pretty good. I can change the opacity on it. I can even move it out manually by eye if I want the drop shadow to be a little bit different. So there's a lot that I can do with this in terms of customization. So I kind of like how that feels. I'll leave that alone because it creates some kind of depth. So that's one effect that I've added. Here's another effect that I can add. I can add a pattern. And there are several patterns here in Photoshop that already exist. You can customize them. You can also make your own. And some are going to be better than others. And you can enhance them and you can scale them. In this case, you can barely see it, so I'm going to darken this up a little bit more, and now you can kind of see that pattern a little bit more clearly. I don't know if I'm in love with that one, though. Let's try and look at a few more. So you can see we've got a few options here. Now, with this one, if I scale it down a little bit, that actually looks a little bit more interesting. And I can decide whether or not I want it to be very visible or, you know, very subtle like this. And I think subtle is a little bit better in this case. So I'm going to hit OK because I'm good with that. Our background layer, I think that that could stand a little bit more depth too. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add this radial gradient to it that I've already made. And I'm just going to drag that to the corner because that right-hand top corner is going to be more visually interesting. We also know that the YouTube timestamp goes in the bottom right-hand corner. So just putting something different and contrasting that probably actually looks really good. So as you can tell, this is probably the area that maybe my main image ends up going in. I don't know if this background remains visible 100% or not, but I can use this shape, and I can even move it over a little bit if I feel like I need more room. It's probably where my text is going to go. And so maybe the title of this video is, maybe it's something really simple. Maybe it's, put this at maybe 255. 7 tips for your mornings. Maybe it's something that simple. Now, one of the things we can do is we can adjust what's called the leading, and this is the space in between words vertically here. So it's the line spacing in between these, and we're reducing that. I'm using Alt and up. You probably are using Option and up if you're on a Mac. Now, in terms of placement, I like to place the text either more toward the center or closer toward the bottom. And part of the reason for that is because YouTube, when you place any of these videos in social media, or it's shared in YouTube, or it's in an end card, likes to take up the space around the top here, right about up to here, to display text on its own. So I kind of like to put my text a lot closer to the center. Now, for what this is and for how it's against this background, we don't really need a drop shadow. We could use a drop shadow, but we really don't need to. We also don't need to make this another color. We have enough going on with colors. If we did do a drop shadow, I think it should be subtle. I don't think it should be a lot. I think maybe even 30% might be enough, you know, maybe 20 or 40. It actually doesn't look bad with one. Just take it with a grain of salt. But it doesn't really need one. But in this case, I don't think it's hurt by it. So maybe that gives it just a little bit more punch and it stands out. The key here is to make your text readable. That's the real answer here. So this isn't looking too bad. We have something pretty sweet going on here. I like it. Now, in terms of our stock photo that we're going to use, we have some choices here. We can go ahead and we can just drop this right in here, and we could ignore that background that we made, and this will work out just fine. This is, for all intents and purposes, a pretty sweet YouTube thumbnail, and we can size this however we think we need to. Just remember then that bottom right hand corner, don't have anything super important because YouTube is going to take that up with its timestamp. So, you know, we don't have really any of her cut off in this, so I think that this actually looks really good either way, and we could call this a day, or we could go another route. We could, if we wanted to be fancy, we could do this as an regular normal overlay with 70% opacity if we thought that that looked good. I don't know how I feel about that though. What if we try another blend mode and we tried overlay, and what if we tried it at 100%? That's not terrible. I just don't know if I like it, and I think it loses something in the image. We could try screen. It's not terrible. I don't know how I like it. Let's see if this screen effect works if I change things with the curves tool. This is a more advanced tool in Photoshop, but it's really interesting because I can control light and dark with it, and you can see how it can create for a much more interesting effect or a more interesting photo doing something so simple. So all of a sudden, that looks better than just having the plain photo there, at least in my opinion. Or, you know, maybe it doesn't. We could decide. There's a lot of things we could do here. We could even try seeing if doing a different blend mode where I have screen on one, and maybe I put overlay on the other, and then with that blending mode, that actually works out. So again, I didn't make this ridiculously complicated, but I got a more interesting image than if I had just left this normal. Because as you can see, if I just go to normal and I don't do a curves adjustment, this is an okay thumbnail. This is a flat image. But if I get more creative with it like I did, it just takes it further and it makes things stand out a little bit more. It makes it just that much more interesting. So you can see that layering this stuff and that making good thumbnails, it may not take you doing 20 or 30 layers in Photoshop and having the skills of, say, a billboard designer. But you can see how I make thumbnails, especially this is how I made the thumbnails in the YouTube Starter Kit, more visually interesting. This is how I made these things from scratch. This is the advantage I had starting out as a YouTuber. This is what gave me and people like PewDiePie a little bit of advantage because we could make our stuff stand out. Now, when you have this ability in the early days of YouTube, like Felix did, then guess what? When nobody was doing what you were doing, and then nobody, even if they were in the same niche as you, was as talented as you are in Photoshop to make their thumbnail stand out whenever it shows up in YouTube, guess what happens? You get the clicks. You get the views. All of a sudden, people are looking for your signature thumbnail and your style and your thing because it looks better than the competitors. So this is an advantage. This is the thing that I think if you have better thumbnails, I think that if you're in a niche and everyone else in your niche is not doing great thumbnails, or there are a few channels that are, if you can do the best thumbnails in your niche, your channel will grow. It may not happen overnight, but your channel has a better shot of growing. And we know that because of what we're seeing in YouTube analytics now with impressions and click-through rates. And it doesn't hurt that we see some of the biggest channels in YouTube in the early days were better than a lot of the people who were competing with them. It's just the way it is. We judge books by their cover. It's very important. So the starter kit does allow full customization, but more importantly, in the starter kit, you will see the settings that I used for things like pattern overlays, drop shadows, curves, gradient effects, and you'll be able to replicate that. You'll be able to see what fonts I chose for certain types of images. So that's part of the other reason I made the YouTube Starter Kit is that you get somebody who does professional Photoshop's insight into how to make clever thumbnails and channel artwork and use some of what look like complex effects to you, but to me are really easy, but you might not be able to do these things on your own from scratch. Or maybe it wouldn't occur to you to combine two effects in an interesting way because you don't know what they do. Or maybe you don't know how to make custom shapes in Photoshop. And I've went ahead and I've done that for you, making cool custom shapes and things like this. And doing special crops like this one to stand out on the YouTube homepage. So there are things that are in the YouTube Starter Kit, even beyond just having something where you can drag and drop images and change your text. The value is that you get to learn how to make better thumbnails just by analyzing how they're broken down, what the layers and effects and things look like. So again, if you haven't gotten the YouTube Starter Kit, right now there is a discount code in the description for you guys. It's usually $99. There are over 160 downloads. That means they're less than $1 a piece, ladies and gentlemen. If you're not getting it now with the discount, I would recommend that. So now you guys have a little bit of a better understanding of how I make YouTube thumbnails and how you can too, and some of the concepts behind it. You saw how I created more depth. You saw how I created a background, a foreground, and a middle ground with the drop shadows. So there's a lot here. There's so much that you can do to make a good thumbnail. And yes, sometimes you can use a thumbnail without text. Text helps make people easily understand what's going on and they don't have to guess as much. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. There is like a room for improvement on some things if you can make them easier to understand, unless the idea is that you want people to be so like curious what's going on here. Then maybe sometimes you don't have text to spell things out, but then there are people who are like, I don't want to waste time. So, you know, then if you're trying to reach those people, maybe making something a little bit more easily explained, you know, in the thumbnail by having the text would help. I am KBit says, wouldn't it be better to just watch Photoshop tutorials than spend $100? Not really, because here's the thing. Even if you watch Photoshop tutorials, it doesn't mean you have the talent to be good at it. And the thing is, it speeds up the process because instead of spending 30 minutes or 40 minutes because you're not talented at Photoshop, you can spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes. After you just spent 4 or 8 hours editing a video, do you really want to spend an hour in Photoshop, or would you rather spend 5 or 10 minutes? So again, if your answer is, oh, is it better to do this, watch stuff for free and do it myself than spend $100? If you're cheap, yeah, I guess. And I'm not being insulting, I'm just making a point. I mean, there's crap I buy because I could clearly do it myself, but I ain't got time for that. I mean, I'm about to start paying people to edit my videos because I could do that. I could sit here and I could edit videos, but then I'm not making courses, I'm not flying all over the world, I'm not going to speaking engagements, I'm not going to VidCon if I'm sitting around editing videos all day. So it's a matter of, do I really want to spend time on something that someone was better at or have a jumping off point? Or do I want to spend a little bit of money now, have something forever that I can just use as a resource and a tool and will probably make me better at the process anyway? Or do I want to fumble through it and be half as good as somebody else, or not even half as good, and still spend hours to not produce a better result? So, you know, I mean, for me, I'd rather throw money at a problem than time, but I also have some money that's disposable, and $100 for 160 downloads is a steal, because if you paid somebody, you'd have to pay somebody maybe $15, $25 to get a decent thumbnail, and you still have to wait for them to deliver it to you. Or you can have this and be able to do it yourself, lickety-split. So, I mean, it's up to you. Everyone has to make their own decision. Everyone has their own budget. I'm just I'd rather save time. I'd rather pay someone else. You know what? I mean, I could mow my lawn for free. But I hire a team of guys to take care of landscaping and mowing my lawn for $150 because I'd rather have 3 guys or 4 guys doing it out there in the hot sun or on a windy day than do it myself. That's just me, though, because my time is, to me, the most valuable thing that I have. I can't get my time back. I can make more money. I can make another $100. Am I going to get back time that I wasted to get a less than stellar result? No. So, you know, I'd rather buy something, or I'd rather hire guys. That's just me, though. Robert Loyal says, no, 4 hours of editing a video, 30 to an hour on a thumbnail. Nah, no thanks. I'd rather pay somebody. Yeah, I agree. Eileen Smith, how are you? This is super value. Thanks, Roberto. Thank you, Eileen. Eileen, you should... Eileen, I know that you do a lot of stuff with social media. You should get in on the affiliate program for the YouTube Starter Kit, because it's 30% commissions on the affiliate program. So if you want to sell the YouTube Starter Kit, you can become an affiliate and get 30% on whatever that is. So just something to think about. But yeah, you can fully customize the stuff in the YouTube Starter Kit in Photoshop or in photop.com, or you know, what have you. My thing is, I just showed you guys some of the things you can do in Photoshop on your own, but I'm not fully confident that everyone has that skill and that talent. I've done literally, I think, 80 Photoshop tutorials on this YouTube channel. Do you realize how many people still just decide to not do it and to pay somebody or to buy something? Like, because that's the answer, is that, do you really want to take the time to be frustrated to do something that you don't have a skill in, or that you're not a master of anyway? I mean, that's just, for a lot of people, the best solution is to save time instead of save money if they have a budget for something. Like I said, it's the difference between, do you go out and mow the lawn yourself, be frustrated, stand out in the sun, or do you want to not do that and just pay somebody? I'm kind of on pay somebody mode. But again, I don't necessarily have to pay somebody to do my thumbnails. Why? Because for me, you see that I could do this in like 5 minutes. Not to mention, I made custom templates that are exclusive to me as well. And I have photos that I have taken of me professionally with an expensive camera, so I can make a good Photoshop thumbnail for me in like 5 minutes. But I also have almost 20 years of Photoshop since I was a kid behind me to be able to do it that quickly. I took 20 years to do something in 5 or 10 minutes that might take someone else 2 hours. So, I mean, that's kind of the point. Clover Tack, thank you for the $5 super chat. Been working on some thumbnail ideas the last few days myself. Read my mind. Thank you, Roberto. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, so yes, you could watch tutorials. Hey, I'm doing a free training here on, like, not only teaching you the Photoshop thing, but I'm explaining the principles behind thumbnail design. I explain the principles, but the thing is, even with me explaining the principles doesn't mean that you'll do a good execution of it. There are plenty of people who go to school for stuff, or they take classes, or they do courses. It doesn't mean that they're good at it. And that could be frustrating, to work so hard to learn something and still not necessarily be good at it just because you know how to do it. Doesn't mean you're actually good at it. I know the rules of basketball, and I've been to a gym class. It doesn't mean that I'm good at it. Shameless Studio asks, can thumbnails be GIFs? I'd like to do that for my animation channel. Unfortunately, no. Thumbnails have to be JPEGs or PNGs, and YouTube does some compression, so even if you could do GIFs, they would probably come out badly. Scott Blooms, the best way to learn how to make great thumbnails in Photoshop is to find a thumbnail you like and try to replicate it. Yup. Or possibly use the YouTube Starter Kit as the foundation for doing exactly that. You can replicate what's in the YouTube Starter Kit, or you can use it as a jumping off point, or you could use it to get closer to a thumbnail that you like from a larger creator. So, I mean, that would be an answer. Erica Robin, can you create a networking and feedback site similar to what we have in the WordPress community pool? That would probably, the closest thing to that would be my Discord server. So if you go to robertoblake.com/discord, there's some things like that there where we have a constructive criticism section that's actually pretty decent. So I'd recommend that. Mohammed asked, as a student, I wanted to ask you, when we design and come up with ideas, how do we get those ideas from our heads to paper and then create them on the PC? I sketch a lot. I mean, that's an actual talent to being a creative professional and designer, is if you can't get through that barrier, it may not be your talent or your skill. And that's not meant to be discouraging. It's meant to say that, like, if you can't get something from your head to paper or to a computer, that is kind of the skill to have, or the temperament or imagination to have to go into creative services, which means it may not be your thing if that is something you cannot do easily or very well. Ideation, sketching, doodling, drawing, that's the process for that. If you are not good with visualization and projection, that is a barrier to your skills. If it's about creativity, you could still be a graphic designer, but you would be a production artist that isn't doing the creative side. You wouldn't be doing ideation if that's where your skill doesn't lie. You would be a technician. And so you might do digital print production, you might do spot checks, you might do layouts, which is basically just you doing replication work, or you might be doing resizing and formatting, but you may not be doing the actual creative. And that's okay. That still pays very well, and you still get to call yourself a designer. You just aren't doing the creative side, and that's fine. There are people who can't be technicians at all, and those people are art directors or creative directors sometimes because they come up with ideas, but they can't execute on those ideas. So, just take that with a grain of salt. And also, you're a student. You've got time. You might evolve. You might grow. You might develop or cultivate a talent for ideation. So again, I don't say that to be discouraging. I'm saying that thinking as somebody who hires people and thinks about, there are times when people want badly to be good at something and you just don't have the aptitude for it. You can refine technique and tools and all those things, but if someone does the same study and training as you and has actual talent at it, it's going to feel very discouraging when you stand up your stuff against their stuff, because if you only have technique with no talent, or talent with no technique, it's still a half measure. It's still a half measure. So that's just something that I want people to understand. And it's okay to not always be good at something. It's okay. You can partner with people. You can hire people. You can do so many things. That is something I want a lot of you to understand. So, the lines on my screen are grid lines for layout. So we can understand our safety margins, because someone was asking that. Someone's asking if IMAX are better for design. I it depends on whether you are a Mac OS person or not. It's just whatever you want to use. I'm using a PC right now with dual screens because I can put all the RAM and hard drives and all the raw power I want in there, and I don't have to worry about Apple telling me I can't, because, you know, screw that. Someone's asking if I already covered it, what are the right sizes for YouTube thumbnails? You can do 1280 by 720, but I prefer to do 1920 by 1080 because I like going full screen. I like, you know, I mean, this is what I use is, hang on, this is what I use is I go with 1920 by 1080 because it's the same as the YouTube screen unless you're doing 4K. The file size has to be less than 2 megabytes though. So when I make a thumbnail, that's the direction that I go in. And I'm using Photoshop, by the way, if that wasn't absolutely clear. How do I feel about Quark Express? InDesign for life. Quark Express is dead for me, and it was always too hard to use compared to Adobe InDesign. So I hate Quark Express with a flaming passion. I mean, it was good back in the day when it was your main option, back in the old design days, but, you know. But yeah, so I showed you guys earlier, I showed you how to make a YouTube end card from scratch. I showed you how to make a YouTube thumbnail completely from scratch, knowing that you can drop in a photograph you already have, use assets that exist in Photoshop as far as text and patterns and colors, and make your own shapes. So, I mean, you understand some of the basic techniques here. We talked about color theory. We talked about creating color contrast. Like, the big thing about this that jumps out, and let me remove the grid lines, is the great thing that jumps out about this thumbnail when you take a good look at it. And when you look at this thumbnail, there are elements that stand out and catch your attention. The text is easy to read. The color contrast makes it interesting. The depth in the background, the high levels of contrast in the photo, the sharpness, all of this makes it very compelling and interesting and not feel generic. And that looks really cool. And there are a lot of different approaches we could have taken with this. Even if we didn't use this text and this shape, or even if we didn't use the text and we used mostly this photo, and I have to select both of these layers to move this over, you'll notice something. We could have went with this and it wouldn't have been god-awful. It's not that bad. We would have had to have made the drop shadow here a bit more prominent on this text for it to stand out, or we would have had to use color. Again, this is not my preference for this thumbnail, but I'm just showing you that if we didn't go fancy, there are ways we could make this work. I don't like that color, so I will try this orange because nix colors, and instead of using less drop shadow, maybe I use more. And I don't think this is as good. I'm just pointing out that there were options. I don't love the color though. I'll fix that. Maybe I end up going with something like a blue after all, or something like that. It's not the worst. Or if we go white. It's not bad. Again, it wouldn't be my preference. So, it's not what I would have chosen for this. Let me grab the history window so I can literally undo all of that, because I'm like, I don't love that. There we go. Oh, another thing you can do in Photoshop is if you like what you have, before you get too many undos, you can do what's called snap a snapshot. And so now I've kind of permanently saved these current changes. And if I make other changes, I can do another snapshot. So I definitely recommend doing that. The snapshot tool is like probably one of the most underused tools in Photoshop. But yeah, so I do things like this because you can make a thumbnail stand out. You can make it visually interesting, and we're still covering ourselves for the fact that in the bottom right-hand corner, YouTube puts a big old timestamp. In the top left-hand, it does the title across there sometimes based on what you're doing. So I really look, at something like that. King Rick Queen Unique says, Roberto, can you create a YouTube starter kit with like 5 items for like $10? No, I don't think I can. Like, I think doing that literally defeats the point and the value of the bulk of the YouTube starter kit. Like, the whole point is I keep adding assets so the value keeps actually getting better and better, and you have lifetime access. Doing like 5 things that you can get for $10, some people would buy that because that's their only budget, and yeah, that might be good for me as like a little vending machine type thing, but I think it defeats the point. I think it defeats the value of the YouTube starter kit. And you get more in the YouTube starter kit than just the bunch of thumbnails. You also are getting YouTube end cards. You're getting channel artwork packs, and I'm going to be adding some more of those. You're also getting access to the 100 ideas for starting a YouTube channel. You're getting some training stuff. You're getting the 100 fonts that you can find for free, and you're getting direct links to those so you don't really have to hunt them down. You're getting some free music. You're also getting links to where you can get hundreds, if not thousands, of downloads of free music. There's a lot in the YouTube starter kit. I don't think making a $10 version of it makes sense when I'm giving you over $1,000 worth of value for $100, and right now I'm running a coupon code, so I really don't see the point of a $10 product for this. So, it's just, it is what it is, and I get that not everyone feels like they have the budget. Save up. If you're investing in your YouTube channel, trust me, $100 to be able to get branding right is going to be the least you invest into your YouTube channel in the life of your channel. Recently I went and I bought some new camera gear, some new audio stuff. I mean, I think I spent $120 on just having a better microphone for these live streams. There's an investment that is made in being a successful YouTuber. Very few people that are going to spend $100 to start YouTube and that's it, end up doing very well if that's all the money they put into a YouTube channel. You don't hear a lot of people saying that they got to 1 million subscribers investing, like 10 or 20 bucks into their YouTube channel. You don't hear a lot of successful Instagram accounts saying that, yes, they only invested $20 or $30 or $50 into becoming a successful Instagrammer. It really doesn't work that way, guys. There is, to some degree, I'm not saying you have to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars, but there's like, if you look at the people who are successful on YouTube, a lot of them invested into this and they built up over time, and not just working really hard at it, they really committed. They treated it like a business or like a craft or anything else. So that's the answer. Shasta Graphics. I'm using graphic design in this training, but this is not a graphic design live stream, so I'm not really fielding graphic design questions that aren't directly related to what we're doing. So yeah, Aaron Robinson did a $5 super chat. Hey Roberto, off the top of your head, do you have any video references you can give that teach us how to pitch our graphic design to small business? Well, I'm going to answer that one despite what I just said because it's a super chat. So, you paid me to answer this question, so I guess I have to answer it. And the answer to that is I do have some videos that talk about pitching yourself to a small business, but the most important thing is you aren't selling them graphic design. You're selling them the ability to market themselves better. You're selling them the ability to represent their brand better. If I'm selling you photography, I'm not selling you photography. I'm selling you an image that lets you do this, or an image that captures this, or the ability to have this memory. I'm not selling you photos. I'm selling you what the photos do for you. So the problem is, if you're not unlike YouTube, if you're trying to sell someone graphic design, you will never sell them graphic design. No one buys graphic design. They buy what graphic design does for their business. So you have to put whatever your pitch is into terms. People don't watch a YouTube video to watch a YouTube video. They watch a YouTube video that does something for them, whether it's education, whether it's entertainment, whether it's motivation. You watch Casey Neistat because you want a feel-good video today, or you want to see something interesting or exciting. You watch Philip DeFranco, yes, for his lovely personality and his snarky humor and the jokes, but you also watch it to be slightly more aware of what might be going on in the world. Or at least on the internet, if nothing else. So there is the thing that you're doing, and then there's the thing that it accomplishes. And no one buys the thing that you're doing. They buy what you do accomplishes for them, specifically. So in any case, that's where being vague about what your value proposition is becomes important. The nuts and bolts of what you do is not what the person that's paying for it or watching it or giving time to it is that interested in. They're interested in what outcome it provides to them. So that's what I would say about that. Miss Elegant Forever asked, how am I enjoying Georgia? I'm enjoying the weather. I need to get out a little bit more besides going to the airport, so to leave. But no, I've been digging it, and I actually went to the Dogwood Festival, so I had a good time. I did a lot with the camera. I tested the 70 to 200 millimeter lens, which is a fantastic lens for photography. I think that it could actually be a really good lens for doing photography for product reviews, actually. So as far as the photography side for thumbnails, because, if you can't do graphic design, you at least have to be good at photography. And if you want to be good at photography, I say look at stock photos and look at stock photo websites and then replicate that for things for your YouTube videos. I say look at what photographers are doing in Instagram and see if you can replicate that. So, I think that graphic design and doing things like the YouTube Starter Kit could certainly help you with better YouTube thumbnails, but if all else fails, a good thumbnail could come down to a good photograph, if not good design. But the rules of good photography would still apply there, and that's very difficult for people to get right sometimes, and then they may not have the camera to accommodate that. So the thing is, I think that Photoshop as software, or even Photopea or GIMP or something like that as software, that's relatively cheap compared to buying a better camera than whatever you're using for your YouTube videos, because you might be using a webcam. If you can't afford something better, you might be using your phone. So I feel that the software is cheap enough, and then if you use something like the YouTube Starter Kit on top of the software, you can produce things that are competitive with channels at 100,000 subscribers, because that's what the basis for the design of the assets that I do in Photoshop for the YouTube Starter Kit, for my own stuff. I'm doing for you guys and giving you guys in this the same type of things that I use for my channel at 300K, 100K plus, and I actually studied the channels that are at 1 million and plus for designing some of these things for the YouTube Starter Kit. And by buying into that, you would be, a little bit more competitive potentially, because if you look at the things that are in the YouTube Starter Kit, and then you think about some of the top channels out there, and you think about how their stuff looks and is designed, you will see similarities. You will see that, these thumbnails are similar to the best channels out there when I see them do stuff, or some of them are better even. So if I had these kind of graphics, my stuff starts to look like a bigger channel. And remember, when people click on your YouTube videos, nobody sees your subscriber count until after the fact. If you guys think that you cannot get any love on YouTube because you're a small channel, remember that the new YouTube analytics and what YouTube is telling you with impressions on a video and then click-through rates completely puts the lie to the idea that YouTube isn't promoting your small channel or isn't distributing videos. If people are getting these impressions, they're seeing it and making a choice not to click on the thumbnail. And that's data that we have now. So that is something we can no longer blame on YouTube. And by upping your thumbnail game, you're taking responsibility for your channel. Some people are talking about YouTube's new pilot program. I have no idea what that is. What's this new pilot program that people are talking about? Because I don't know what it is, and I can't imagine like that. What's YouTube's pilot program? What does Google say YouTube's new pilot program is? Because I haven't heard about this. No one's talking about this, and I don't even know if it's a real thing. I don't know, like YouTube pilot program. What's going on with this? Like, someone in the live chat want to explain to me what this YouTube pilot program is. YouTube announces monetization pilot in hopes of addressing creator concerns. Really? Huh. That could be an interesting video in the future. Let's see. It was YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki announced a new pilot program in an attempt to address the... See, this is how you guys know that I don't use teleprompters, because it's like totally different. And I obviously need my glasses. YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki announced a new pilot program in an attempt to address the concerns of the platform's creator community frustrated by new monetization eligibility criteria. In a blog post, Wojcicki said that a small set of creators is testing a new video upload flow that will allow creators to get more specific with the video information as it relates to advertiser-friendly guidelines. The self-certification feature is being added to help creators avoid false positives on monetization icons, changes between green and yellow, and avoid having to undergo an appeal process with YouTube. The feature lets creators answer questions before they publish videos about whether their content contains profanity, violence, or other aspects that might be picked up by YouTube's algorithms or internal human reviewers. In an ideal world, we'll eventually get to a state where creators across the platform are able to accurately represent what's in their videos so that their insights combined with those of our algorithmic classifiers and human reviewers will make the monetization process much smoother with fewer false positive demonetizations, Wojcicki wrote. YouTube said that in February it released an update to its systems to improve overall accuracy and decrease icon flip-flopping by 90%. Wojcicki said that YouTube is also testing sponsorships as a monetization alternative to ads, which basically is not sponsorships as we've known them, but is sponsorships in the form of something similar to what Twitch paid subscribers are. So that's just the difference there in how it's presented. I think the wording they used was bollocks. I think that they need to come up with a better word than sponsorships because they're confusing people by calling it sponsorships, but whatever. YouTube plans to expand availability of the feature to more creators in the coming months. So the short version is I do not have access to a new YouTube pilot program. I don't know that's the thing that they would want me to beta. I think that I'm more of a candidate for the new YouTube Reels feature, which is similar to Instagram, because I'm not experiencing the monetization woes and demonetization and the things that, say, creators like Philip DeFranco and Ethan and Gila from H3H3 are experiencing. So that doesn't affect me as much, so I don't know how viable I am to really be in that pilot program anyway as far as giving good feedback. As a YouTube certified expert, maybe there is good feedback that I could give. As an AdWords buyer, as someone who's an advertiser and a creator, maybe there's good feedback I can go, so maybe I should be in the beta for this. But the thing is, because I understand how an advertiser thinks about these things, I've explained it, especially on this channel, especially in the live streams, so much, most of you should have a better idea of how to avoid this as best as you can. The algorithm still has bugs and glitches to where you may not be able to, but anything you can do, I feel like I might have done at least a halfway decent job of enabling you to do whatever you can do to help your channel not get hit by demonetization wherever possible. Obviously, there are things that are out of your control, but I think that I've covered a lot of what is in your control here on the live streams and on the platform. And I've also come from that advertiser perspective. So I also think that you're essentially trusting YouTubers here to adhere by an honor system. And if YouTubers were going to adhere by an honor system and weren't going to do nonsense and say, of course my videos are advertiser friendly, I might have some hope, but I don't trust people to actually be honest in that way. And that sounds very negative of me or cynical of me, but hear me out on this. If people could be trusted on YouTube to act with the best of intentions, then people wouldn't have been hacking the algorithm and the YouTube reply girls wouldn't have been a thing, and we'd still have YouTube reply videos, which was an awesome feature, but we can't have nice things because people can't be honest. We can't have nice things because clearly an honor system in YouTube, if an honor system in YouTube were going to work, we wouldn't have ElsaGate. We wouldn't have ElsaGate. We wouldn't have horrible, horrible videos in the YouTube Kids app. So to reference Clover Tech here, Stone Cold Steve Austin, DTA, don't trust anyone. Can we have those shirts back? Can we get Stone Cold Steve Austin merch back? Austin 6316. Like, yeah, like all about Stone Cold Steve Austin. Man, I miss when I used to be a fan of the WWE back when it was the WWF. Man, those were the days. That's the only return to the good old days that I want, is like when the golden years, in my opinion, of wrestling. It's the only return to the good old days I want. You know, that, you know, that Stone Cold Steve Austin theme, all about it. So yeah, but yeah, I think that YouTube is trying to do something with this new system to help as many people as they can. We'll see how it goes. We will see how it goes. We'll see if they can teach the algorithm to do better, or if people who aren't acting with good intentions are just going to screw it up for everybody. Because I'll be real with you, most of the problems, before I go here and before I answer some last questions about the graphics side of things, I'll be real with you, most of the problems in YouTube are because of the YouTube community itself and the users. I'm not letting Susan Wojcicki and the leadership team off the hook. The boots on the ground employees of YouTube are hardworking people who do everything they can. And Ted Times, I'm going to address what you said. But the YouTube boots on the ground team, the day-to-day rank and file employees, are the hardest working people in the world, and they're awesome. The leadership isn't out to get you. Susan Wojcicki isn't out to get you. I just think that their vision of the platform conflicts with what a creator's vision of the platform might be, even if that creator respects the business side and that hustle, and YouTube, the media company. I think YouTube, the media company, has supplanted the priority in the minds of leadership versus YouTube, the technical platform, and YouTube, the community. They're trying to address the community, but if the glitches and the system errors and the instability of the platform that we've been experiencing for the last couple of months is any indication, it's clear that quality control on the tech platform itself, the technology platform itself, has not been a priority of leadership, or we wouldn't be having the issues that we're having. So with people's live streams being deleted, with people not being able to upload videos sometimes, with all these weird errors, with the video defaults that they have set being overridden, these are systemic problems. And it shows that there is a lack of quality control, because those systemic problems are not things we've experienced in the past up until now. Not at this level, not at this amount of frequency. So I feel that the tech platform is not being given nearly as much priority as the media platform, the media acquisition team that focuses on things like YouTube Red and focuses on the PR and the promotion, even if they're very bad at the PR sometimes. And so I feel like YouTube is acting more like a media company that has to address every scandal and every hiccup and every grievance and every big creator that threatens to leave the platform. And I feel like more attention is being paid to that than fixing actual problems with the technology under the hood. I feel that it's reactionary instead of preemptive. And I feel that oftentimes that a lot of people are not prioritizing within leadership the community beyond when the larger people make noise about something, and then it's reactionary yet again. And I feel that it's a problem. I feel that it's a problem, and I feel it's something that wouldn't happen if more people in leadership were actually creators. And people in leadership refuse to be creators and learn to have a creator perspective. They'd rather rationalize why you don't have to be a creator to lead a creative company. They'd rather rationalize their previous experience, but YouTube is something that hadn't existed before. And I don't agree with that. Even when I'm not going to do something, I'm going to outsource it. I educate myself and I put myself in that person's shoes for at least a period of time so that I can have empathy, and so that I'm also not talking out of my butt when I explain to them what I want them to do and to accomplish and what my expectations are. That's why even if I'm not going to be a programmer, guess what I've done? I've done coding, I've done web development, and then I've dabbled in almost every major programming language at some point, and I think programmatically, and I've studied all of those things to some extent because I knew I was going to hire for that, and I, as a leader, refuse to ask things of people that I have no understanding of at all. I want to at least have a rudimentary understanding. And you know who else is a leader like that? Not that I'm making a comparison between us, but you know what makes great leaders? People like Elon Musk educate themselves as much as possible so they can hold a conversation with some level of competency when they make demands of their employees and when they ask things of people. So that's my leadership style. I would like to see that more reflected in the leadership of YouTube with regard to understanding a creator perspective. I don't think they can understand a creator's perspective if they haven't walked a mile in a creator's shoes. And so that's my issue. That's my beef there. And it's, again, nothing against those people because they do a hard job. They do a nearly impossible job. But I think there are things that they could do that would make that job easier in some ways when they have to address the concerns of the community. Now, to address something that Ted was saying earlier about Gary Vee trusting everyone, well, I mean, that's Gary Vee, and Gary Vee has overwhelming optimism, and there are certain experiences that his life precludes, and while he would like more people to embrace that, and I try to embrace that, that's not everyone's experience. So you can't always have the I trust everybody until they give me a reason not to, because you might not be capable of that because your life experiences may not make you someone who's currently capable of that. So I just want to give perspective that you could admire people and you could admire their philosophy and how they embrace life. You could aspire to that, but don't get it twisted because you haven't lived their life to have that outcome, to have that perspective. You can adopt aspects of it, but you won't be them. So you may not be able to grab their perspective onto yourself. And you might find that your life is actually worse if you try to force a narrative on yourself that doesn't fit who you are and what your life experiences have been. Just saying. Yeah. So, you know, those are things that I think about. So I'm going to take some final questions because we're coming up on 2 hours here, and I've got to get back to work on some product development and getting you guys some new stuff into the YouTube Starter Kit, getting you some new stuff in courses, and so on and so forth. So I take some more questions regarding the graphic design side and things we covered today in our training around thumbnails and what makes good thumbnails, what makes good end cards, what makes good graphics. I want to really make sure that I address some of your questions surrounding this. And of course, I want to remind you that links to everything are in the description down below. Make sure you're getting your discount for AwesomeCreatorAcademy.com's YouTube Starter Kit, and make sure you're hitting that up because I think that it would help a lot more of you to get those clicks and to be successful on YouTube, because you need clicks in order to get your videos seen. YouTube is giving impressions, it's putting in front of people, but if they're not clicking, they're not watching. And if you want your videos to do well, if you want your YouTube channel to survive, good thumbnails are probably the foundation of a healthy channel. You still need good content, but nobody knows how good your content is if they aren't clicking on it. Sinnerdablitz says, what site do you think explains color theory the best? I think there are several design sites and articles that you could look up on color theory. The shortcut to applying color theory is to look at successful brands that have used it well. Sports brands, in my opinion, are the best. I think that if you want to look at articles on things like, you know, How Brand or Print Magazine or Creative Pro or anything like that, or Adobe's blog, that there are plenty of great articles about color theory. There are probably great YouTube videos about color theory from friends of mine like Stephen Looney or Sean Barry or Charlie Murray TV or Will Patterson. These are some of the Karen Cabot. These are some of the best graphic designers on YouTube. If you want to learn about color theory, I would probably watch one of their videos. I might address it in the future. I like giving the example of application of color theory, meaning sports teams and major brands, that icons, graphics, the things that are in the apps on your phone are great examples of the application of good color theory. So you could learn about color theory and keep it theoretical, but I like seeing applications of it, and it makes sense. Leadership with Mike. I don't think there's a max to how many words can be in a YouTube thumbnail. I think the size absolutely has to be readable on a smartphone. So I don't think that there's a max or a minimum, and I think it also depends on who your audience is. Zane Merchant, you can get the new analytics by clicking on the YouTube Studio Beta at the bottom of your dashboard. It's a little blue thing. Everybody has access to the beta at this point. Ted Time says, I want to go live on YouTube, but whenever I do, people unsubscribe, so I stopped. I think I'll stick to you now. If you want to do live content on your channel, and that's what you want to create, you shouldn't worry about whether you lose subscribers. I mean, someone could say, oh, that's easy for you to say, Roberto. It's like, I might net 7,000 to 9,000 new subscribers every month, but I still bleed 500 to 1,000 subscribers that are, done with my content, or they want to come back, or it's a, whatever, or it's an unsub bug, or they're an inactive user now and YouTube's purging them, whatever. So I don't worry about bleeding subscribers. I think if you want to make content, you have to stop caring about that stuff. I think that the people who've blown up in YouTube mostly were people who made the content they wanted to make and that they thought was pushing the envelope in what they were doing, and they didn't worry about it. I mean, that's what I've seen when I observe people. When I see people care about growing their subscribers, they don't grow their subscribers. When I see people care about losing subscribers, they lose subscribers. When I see people care about making the best video with the best thumbnail, with the best everything, those people win. CleverTax says, seems companies I work with like solid branding and consistency. Viewers seem to prefer flash and pizzazz. How can that line be walked effectively? I think you have to test and experiment. I would do A/B testing using TubeBuddy and see what works on both ends. And I would experiment over and over until I find the middle of the road. PSA Music says, how do you think you can make a thumbnail for a reaction video, because there's a lot of competition, reaction niche due to the thumbnail, which makes it difficult to get clicks? Like I did in the YouTube Starter Kit, reaction video template. So there's that, and I think it pretty much speaks for itself. But there are other ways to do it, and you could use shapes to do that. You could use shapes. You could use good branding colors. You could make a caricature of yourself. You could use a TV screen. Like, I mean, I came up with my own version of it, is that, you put something in a TV screen and you put reaction and you put something else here in the background. It could be the same. It could be different. Like, that's one angle to it. There's so many ways to do it. Again, you can use colors. You can use shapes to help you. You could use a die cut kind of deal. Like, I mean, I feel like, and no offense, but this is the problem with reaction channels in general, is to come up with an interesting thumbnail in that niche doesn't require a lot of imagination, but to make a reaction video doesn't require a lot of imagination either. The best reaction channels, I think, right now, growing, have been the reaction channels that build a character from a show and then do that and then react in the voiceover of the character from the show and are doing character reactions. That at least was clever, and that showed some ingenuity and imagination. But reaction channels, by their nature, and I'm not hating on you or hating on the genre, I'm just saying it's like they don't require the same level of creativity and effort as most channels. So then to not even have the creativity to make a thumbnail slightly different in the niche, that's telling of what the trend in that niche and genre is and where it's lacking. It seems that those channels end up being YouTube channels for the sake of being YouTube channels or for the sake of blowing up or getting views, because you could do a creative reaction channel. Maybe you're doing one. Maybe there are a few people who have. But it usually is so competitive and saturated because it is the lowest barrier to entry. It is the low-hanging fruit of the YouTube platform. Ted Time says, I actually tried vidIQ and I changed my tags, so now I come up first for this thing that people search. However, I feel like no one will search it. Well, search is search and discovery. Maybe it gets picked up by something and recommended. Like, if you're making content you don't think it's going to be searched, there's more that you have to do to promote it. So, but also, again, the thing I want to focus on is questions related to what we just did with regard to thumbnails and the branding side. Yeah, the Fine Bros are pretty decent when it comes to reactions because, one, they were probably the thing that made reactions popular on YouTube, and they did come up with a variation of the format that's very hard to do without ripping them off. But there are people who can do reaction videos and be more creative, but it would require a format change. But because they don't see other people on YouTube doing it, they don't even attempt it, because that's the thing. That's why YouTube, do you realize that's why most people aren't successful on YouTube, is because they won't do anything differently, because they don't see anyone else doing it. They don't think it'll be popular, so they don't even try, because that's their only goal. Their goal isn't to make unique or original content or make the thing that they want to make the most. Everyone, well, not everyone, but 95% of people on YouTube, the entire reason they're not successful at YouTube is because they're trying to be successful at YouTube. Like, I mean, I know how that sounds, but let's think about that. People are not successful on YouTube because they're trying to be successful on YouTube. It's because they look at what people are doing successfully on YouTube and think that that's what they need to do, without taking into the simple consideration that, well, that's been done, and it's been done by someone bigger than me that's already made it, that's already, why, if I'm not different than that, why would anyone watch me? They refuse to be different because being different means taking a risk. It means possibly being rejected. It means that no one might watch. The only way to overcome that is if you're 100% in love with the content that you're going to make. So if you are 100% in love with the content you're going to make, you won't care if someone's watching it. You will feel better if they do, but you will watch, you will make it because you wanted to make it, and you wanted to make videos, and you always wanted to make that short film, or you wanted to do that reaction, or you loved that thing and you just wanted to talk to someone about it, and that got watched by however many people, and then maybe people shared it. That's how people become successful on YouTube. That's historically always really been true. Philip DeFranco became successful on YouTube because he wanted to talk about things that are going on in the world that he thinks are interesting, and he didn't really have other people his age to talk to who wanted to talk about it. Like, that's what it was. Hank Green and John Green. It was very much a very similar story, and also they wanted to reconnect as brothers. They were adults and they hadn't been close and weren't talking very often, and then they started talking every week through vlogs, and it was interesting. That's how Brotherhood 2.0 started. That's how the Vlog Brothers started. That's how the Nerd Fighter community started. That's how they ended up building VidCon later. But no one was doing it. And again, everyone is so, well, I don't know what to do, or people want to be on YouTube for the sake of being on YouTube. They're not going on YouTube in order to be themselves or be different, or they're here seeking something instead of the thing that they're creating being the answer to something inside of them. They're here seeking either internet riches or fame or attention or acceptance instead of seeking an outlet for something they have inside of them. And if you seek an outlet and you have something that people are into, it might be 10, 20, 30,000 people, it might be 500 people, whatever. You should accept that that is what it is. It's like, you call that a small channel, but if you had 500 homies at lunch all clamoring for your attention, you wouldn't be complaining about the number. If you had 30 people clamoring for your attention in the middle of the street, you wouldn't be complaining about the number. But you're going to complain about it in the nebulous thing that is the internet and that is YouTube, because you are comparing yourself to people who have millions. And that's the problem. It's perspective. It's the complete lack of perspective. Because what all of you are lacking in perspective is that Gary Vee made 700 videos for 7 years on the Gary Vaynerchuk YouTube channel for it to only go to about 10,000 subscribers at that time. And that was 5 years ago. 5 years and 1,300 videos later is where it's at over 1 million, like 1.2 million. but I don't think many of you would have the stomach to keep making content to get 10,000 subscribers, barely crack 1,500 videos per upload for like 7 freaking years. I don't think you got... I'm going to show you guys something that's going to blow your minds, and then I'm going to go. I'm going to blow your minds, and then I'm going to let go. But before I do, remember, links in the description below. Grab the YouTube Starter Kit. You get a discount code if you use the link in the description. That discount code is good till the end of April, so jump on that right now. I'm going to show you guys something. I'm going to go to youtube.com. I'm going to look up Gary V. I'm going to show you guys something that's going to blow your minds. You're going to lose your stuff when you understand the reality of YouTube historically by me going to Gary Vaynerchuk's channel. So I'm going to go to Gary Vaynerchuk's YouTube channel. 1.2 million subscribers, the thing all of you want, right? This is what's going to blow your minds. I'm going to go to videos. I'm going to sort in chronological order. And keep in mind that part of this is going to be because people know who he is now and they want to see his early beginnings. So some of these views are even going to be inflated. Some of these views are going to be inflated. Gary Vee has been on YouTube for over 10 years. Wine Library TV is older than this channel. But some of these views are obviously inflated because people wanted to see how Gary got his start now. But let's look through here. Historically, again, and these views are inflated by people doing exactly what I'm doing and then studying Gary from way back when. So, but you're still going to see videos on here that have like 3,000 views, 1.2 thousand views. And by the way, 4 years ago, Gary Vaynerchuk was still 4 years ago a 3-time best-selling author, multimillionaire, and had 1 million Twitter followers 4 years ago. 1.2 views, 2K views, 1K views, 1K views. And again, Gary's still a millionaire at this point. Gary's still a 3-time best-selling author at this point. Gary still has 1 million Twitter followers at this point. Can't seem to crack 10,000 views. Oh, 542 views. 661 views. 4 years ago, just 4 years ago. 3K views. 1K views. Okay? 674 views. 4 years ago. Again, back in, Gary's still a millionaire. Gary still is a world-class public speaker, speaking on stages. Crushing it, has been an all-time bestseller in the business teacher already at this point. 4 years ago. See, a lot of you jumped on the Gary Vee bandwagon really late. All right? 4 years ago, still, like, and he's still speaking, and these are speaking engagement. These are things like that people paid $5,000 to go to some of these events, and they're up here for free, and he's still like, oh, and not getting the views, right? And again, still has 1 million followers on Twitter. Still has 1 million followers on Twitter at this point. Still a multimillionaire, an investor, and a 3-time best-selling author, and can't get the views. All right? 4 years ago. And still uploading, by the way. And still uploading. All of you would be discouraged. Still uploading. And at this point, by the way, he's got this going on. And he had, at this point, 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. And like it's not breaking through. And remember that some of these views are inflated because people have gone back historically now. The millions of people, the 1 million plus subscribers, the 3 million people in Instagram have gone back and inflated these views. And inflated these views now, by the way. Because these view counts were smaller even a little while ago. All right? I'm like, perspective here. 3 years ago, 3.2, and again, he's on his way to a 4th book by then. He starts the Ask Gary Vee show. This is episode 1 of the Ask Gary Vee show. And yeah, this has the views now because historically people have gone back to watch it. And they cared about the Ask Gary Vee show. Because watch this next video upload that's not the Ask Gary Vee show. And this is him on Good Day New York. This is one of the most popular programs on television in New York. This is 3 years ago. 3 years ago. And at this point, Gary has about 25,000 subscribers. reached 3.8K views. And again, I'm telling you that that's still inflated from people going back and historically watching this stuff to see how Gary got started, or where he was when the Ask Gary V show started. So this is the Ask Gary V show. This is and this is 3 years ago. And this is and then I think episode 18 was where my question was featured, I think. No, it wasn't episode 18. I think it was episode 38, I think, was where my question was featured. But again, the show is getting views at this point. And again, a lot of this is inflated by people going back. Yes, 38. I remember this thumbnail because my question has to do with the excuses, and he's the thumb. So this is historically, and see, you can tell because it's people going back and watching the views, because here's Gary V explaining why he wants to buy the New York Jets, his end game goal, the thing that he wants to do before he dies. 4.3K views. That's 3 years ago. He has millions of subscribers. People are going back watching the Ask Gary V show. People are blowing it up. 250,000 views. Blah, 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 blah. 4.3K. 4.3K. 3.3K. 6.5K. And at this point, 4th book is coming out. 3-time best-selling author. And a million followers on Twitter. Already has beat Ashton Kutcher on Twitter. I discovered Gary V just before the Ask Gary V show. Some people had been mentioning to me, but I couldn't pronounce his name, so I couldn't find him. So, it was the episode, it was a couple months before episode 1 of the Ask Gary V show. And I think the person who put me on to Gary V was Jared Polin, one of the photographers that I follow on YouTube. A good guy. Not everyone will love his personality, but I love Jared. Jared Polin is legit, and he took some time to talk to me when we were at VidCon. So he's a good guy. He's a stand-up guy. No matter what people say about you, Jared, I got your back. So, yeah. I mean, look at the difference of the channel. Look, 1.6K views. This is 3 years ago. Gary's at about 20, 30,000 subscribers and still has 1 million Twitter followers, 3-time best-selling author, doing public speaking engagements, getting paid tens of thousands of dollars worldwide, and can't get the views on YouTube, giving away gold for free. And you all probably know who Gary V is now. Again, over 1 million subscribers, 3 million Instagram followers, worldwide social media legend. And 3 years ago, look at how his YouTube channel is performing. And it's just insane to think about. But he keeps going. And he keeps doing it. And keeps putting out. And goes eventually to daily content on this. Most of you would not have the stomach for this. If you look at 7 years of languishing in YouTube obscurity and putting out 700 videos then, most of you don't have the stomach to triple down and put out another 1,400 videos in 3 years. And that's the difference. Gary's giving away some of the best advice on the internet. Multi-millionaire, giving it away, not even trying to take anything from you, and he couldn't get the views, even 3 years ago. Even with the Ask Gary V show blowing up, he does anything else, gives you a nugget of wisdom, and it can't even get 1,000 views, even with 30,000 subscribers, 50,000 subscribers by that time. And it keeps going like this. And then here comes more episodes of the Ask Gary V show, putting that out. The audience loves the Ask Gary V show, we'll give them more of that. And then, he does the short film. This actually didn't perform that well. The most important word ever, being hustle, didn't perform that well initially compared to other things. But now it's become a big staple of the channel. A lot of Gary's short films that D-Rock did have become a staple of the channel. But again, look at this. Still not necessarily getting the views when he does anything that's not the Ask Gary V show or is not a film. And like I said, a lot of this is blown up just historically because people go back and watch the old content now. It wasn't getting even some of these views because if it wasn't for people going back, some of these would be under 1,000. Under 1,000. So this is 3 years ago. And Gary is, again, still just crushing it in the real world, crushing it on all of his other platforms. And he can't get 2K views sometimes. So first of all, any success that you think you have and any subscriber count that you think you have doesn't guarantee you anything. I think that this is proving that. I think your minds are being blown. Because remember, at this point 2 years ago, think about where Gary Vee was 2 years ago. At that point 2 years ago, Gary was about to probably hit, I think about 2 years ago, he hit around this time. It was about roughly 100,000 subscribers. I think it was there. It was pretty close. And with 100,000 subscribers, 1.6K views on a 3-minute and 30-second video about Twitter's algorithm and whether it hurts users. 2 years ago. Where was I 2 years ago? 2 years ago was 2016. All right, so at this point, Gary is probably actually at about 150,000 subscribers, and I would have just broken 100,000. So that's where I was 2 years ago. So, yeah. No, I wasn't at 20K subscribers in 2016. I was at 20K subscribers in 2015. At the end of 2015, I was at 70K subscribers. Yeah, about 70, 75. And then in 2016, early 2016, I hit 100K subscribers. So if you look at what was going on even with Gary and on something that you would think would work, and when he was getting success on other videos, even 2 years ago. So think about this. Gary freaking Vaynerchuk, 1.2 million subscribers right now. The Ask Gary Vee show, social media legend. Already had 1 million followers in Twitter from years ago, and couldn't break 1.6K views 2 years ago on a video that wasn't the Ask Gary Vee show, even if it's a good video. Mind-boggling, right? So, if you, even when he does a clip show of moments from the Ask Gary Vee show, it gets like 2.3 K views. Like, so if you look at this and you look at the historical relevance of one of the most popular people on YouTube, and someone who's been on YouTube since the beginning of the platform, someone who had all of the leverage in the world, somebody who was massively successful in the actual real world and in other social media platforms, could not bring that audience to YouTube even 2 years ago and break through. His flagship show is doing well. Any other content was not. This is telling you about how YouTube works and how audiences work, and that a lot of your assumptions about all this are wrong, and that your assumptions about having a big audience leading to views, or having being famous, even legitimately being internet famous, because you have to remember, Gary Vaynerchuk at this point is also going on Fox News, going on BBC, going on CNN, going on Good Morning America. You're saying, I also think his content style changed for the better. It's much more engaging now. 110%. But if you even look at the early days of the Ask Gary Vee show, it was still the best content out there. And his other content that wasn't the Ask Gary Vee show was still some of the best content out there and some of the best information. And it was some of the highest polished, most produced stuff, because D-Rock is awesome. And so is Stefan and everybody else on the crew at the time. And so that being said, it still wasn't landing all the time. If it wasn't the Ask Gary Vee show, it usually wasn't landing almost at all, unless it was one of the motivational rants or films. So if you put all of that into context, you can see that even with a large audience, a passionate audience, there's no guarantee of views, and people make conscious decisions about what they do and what they don't watch. Because when Gary did anything that wasn't the Ask Gary Vee show, until later when he came up with Daily V, you can see what would happen. Even when it's content that you would think should fit for what this audience is. Even for what this audience is. Even when he tells you about why he's going to buy the New York Jets or this thing or that thing, it's not getting the views. Even when he tells you something that you guys want to think short videos should do better or something like that. Here's why it does. Here's clear proof. But yet these long shows, when people say, oh, no one wants long content, but the Ask Gary Vee show proves otherwise. He can give you, oh, just give us a tip or give us a tactic. He does that, and then it never gets views. You could make the assumption, so someone's saying maybe it's his audience. I'd assume most successful business types don't watch or binge watch YouTube videos. Most of Gary's audience aren't people who are already successful. They're people who want to be successful. They are wantrepreneurs, if you will. And they clearly have time to watch the longer content in the Ask Gary Vee show. And it's like almost all they wanted, aside from the motivational films. So by this point in our story, Gary's almost up to like 1 million subscribers. Gary does an interview with Marie Forleo. Marie Forleo had more subscribers than Gary at that point. He surpassed her, but he's the bigger channel. The collab video didn't even land. The collab video didn't even land. This is a video with Casey Neistat, someone who also 2 years ago, bigger than Gary, a collab with Casey Neistat. You would think that this would be the thing that would break 1 million. And historically, people have gone back and watched this, so that's inflating the views too. Because I remember when this originally came out, and it didn't have nearly as many views, not even close, because I watched that episode. I watched every episode back then. And so all of your assumptions about how YouTube works, if you go back and you historically watch a lot of these channels, even Jake and Logan Paul's channel, even with them having their massive Vine audience, you can go through the historical data if you want to sit there and comb through it for about 30 minutes to an hour, and you will learn about, no matter how successful or how long you've been on the platform or how good you think it was back in the old days, you will learn about how YouTube works and performs. Even in the heyday of the Ask Gary Vee show, look at this. Gary does a keynote of one of his speeches from 2014, revives that keynote. This is him giving away content that people paid $1,000 to get from the stage. Giving it away, not getting views. Giving it away, not getting views. Giving it away, not getting views. So when you can go to 1 million plus subscribed YouTube channel, go just 2 years back in its timeline, with it having 1 million subscribers, and pull videos out that have 4K views, 2K views, 7K views on 1 million subscribed plus channels, and in the same breath see videos that have hundreds of thousands of views that came out the same week as that. What does that tell you about audience loyalty? What does that tell you about YouTube? People really do pick and choose and cherry pick what they watch. Even someone like Gary Vee cannot have the expectation that everyone will watch every single one of his videos. And the thing is, you should if you are someone who wants to quit your day job or become an entrepreneur or become successful, because this is a multi-millionaire, someone who has an agency that makes almost a $250,000 a year agency, giving away free advice. Why wouldn't you watch every single video that this guy puts out? If you are not in that position or you're not as successful as you'd like to be, why wouldn't you watch every single Gary Vaynerchuk video? But again, the audience doesn't work that way. YouTube doesn't work that way. The assumptions that YouTubers have, especially young YouTubers, that if I have an audience, they will watch my videos. If I have 1 million subscribers, I will get this many views per video. Oh, if you have 100,000 subscribers, you will get this many views per video. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. And even with good thumbnails, even with good titles, even with, because he has a professional graphic designer on staff. And it doesn't work that way. There are going to be Gary Vee videos from a year ago that don't break 10,000 subscribers. And remember, a year ago, Gary still had like 500,000 subscribers. And there are going to be videos here that barely break 10 or 20K, even with him having a 500,000 subscribers last year, once we get to a year ago. So, again, loyalty is a weird thing. Audience loyalty and views and things of that nature are a weird thing. Now, at this point, Gary's also, his team is getting savvy, and they figured out more or less some things that the audience will and won't watch. So you're going to see some of those views like land more often, because despite almost 10 years, in 10 years, this is when they're figuring out what will and won't work. But you still see at this point with Gary with 500,000 subscribers trying to break through 20K views, with 500,000 subscribers trying to break through 20K views. Eventually has some stuff that goes pretty big, 2.5 4 million. But again, this one doesn't even break 20K. And again, a year ago, think about this. Gary's at 1 million now. A year ago, he was still big. He was at 250,000, 500,000, depending on where you are in the timeline. But a channel with 250,000, 500,000, still can't always break 20K views. And at this point, Gary's proven himself. Gary's a 4-time best-selling author at this point. And he's already been not only internet famous, legitimately famous. So just put this into perspective that if this is the view count of somebody who's internet famous, was already independently wealthy, and is a 4, now 5-time best-selling author, and sometimes their content doesn't perform to the standard that you would expect just based on the pool of audience that they can reach, with the highest production values, the highest content, a staff of 16 people on the content team, not counting the 600 employees at Vayner, a staff of 16 people helping produce content day in and day out, and it can't always crack a certain amount of views. So when you look at this, when you break it down, I want you to understand the reality of YouTube and how harsh of a mistress YouTube is. I really want you to put this into perspective, because Gary is the best. Gary is the best. And Gary has a staff of people who are the best at what they do. The top tier talent. And even with a million subscribers and millions more loyal fans, 3 million on Instagram, 1 million in Twitter, the content doesn't always break through. But I see a lot of people getting frustrated, and this is a decade in, ladies and gentlemen. This is a decade in. Like, Peter McKinnon blew Gary out of the water in a year. Peter McKinnon is almost at 2 million now, and it's been like a year. Gary's been at this forever and is the best in the world. World-class public speaker, 5-time best-selling author, multi-millionaire investor, internet legend, been on every TV program, every Forbes article, Forbes 40 under 40, will be Forbes 50 under 50, and at the same time is not pulling in the views of, say, for example, Peter McKinnon or this one or that one. And Peter McKinnon has doubled the subscribers in a year that Gary took 10 years to accumulate. So put YouTube into perspective and stop being frustrated a year in, 6 months in. And, look at all the testing. Look at all the experimentation. Look at all the refinement. Look at the difference. And again, it picks up and it picks up and it has its moments, and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it falls flat. And when they introduced Daily V, a year ago, or rather almost 2 years ago, now it's up to 400 episodes. There are more episodes of Daily V than there are of the Ask Gary V show at this point. So when you guys are wondering, well, what do I do? And yes, TED Times, I agree with you. Peter McKinnon is a unicorn. But I think that the issue that I'm bringing up is people are assuming or judging themselves against unicorns. I bring up Gary partly because I don't want to bring up myself. I could also use Jared Polin as an example in this case as well. But I want you to see that hard work, consistency, experimentation, refining your craft, and tripling down, you can see Gary's come a long way. And despite his success in every other arena, he's had to fight tooth and nail for the success he has in social media, or in this platform in particular that we call YouTube, despite being here forever and being part of the game forever. He's had to fight tooth and nail to get here in YouTube in a way that a lot of people take for granted or have the expectation of. And in his case, it's hard work. And he's selling something that's very unsexy because he's selling hard work. He's selling hard work. And that's kind of the business and gig I'm in. And it's not the sexiest thing in the world. So, but he made it. He made it. So if we can do things that are wildly unsexy and not obsess over our numbers and, you know, and keep experimenting and keep pushing, then I want more of you to be less frustrated with YouTube and understand that you have to step your game up, because if you're getting frustrated after 6 months, you know, versus people who fought tooth and nail to get a little bit in 7 years and then blew up over the course of 3, like, I don't think you're going to make it. Like, you know, because that's the game. That's just how it is. And I think that more people have to respect the game. I think there are a lot of people that are crying about the rule book instead of playing against the rule book. You can't cry about the rule book because you're not going to get a rewrite. You're not going to get a rewrite. So you might as well learn how to play the rule book. You know, that's just real. So, you know, now some of you are asking, well, what do I think of Gary Vee's thumbnails? I think that this team figured out what works for their audience. Up to a point, you can make the argument that because he's Gary Vee now, you could say, like, there's a point where because he's Gary Vee now, it may not quote-unquote matter what he does, but I would beg to differ because you'd have to start analyzing his second channel, and then you can tell me that, you know? Or you can look at the history of Wine Library TV and the fact that that channel still isn't growing much, despite its historical relevance in the Gary Vee ecosystem. So I think that just being Gary Vee isn't enough. And the thing is, I still think there are a lot of people who don't know who Gary Vee is. Consider that the relationship and friendship between Gary Vee and Casey Neistat, and how many of Casey Neistat's audience doesn't know who Gary Vee is, doesn't watch his content, doesn't subscribe, despite their collaborations, despite their relationship, despite the fact they're both in New York. So, I mean, just think about that. Ted Time says, I've been on YouTube since 2009. I've seen some small success here and there, but it's been on with a channel that I don't care about and I'm not proud of. On another channel, I had a video that hit 880K. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes if you're chasing those numbers, you don't end up making content that you're proud of and proud to put your name on. And that's the thing. I think that sometimes that the real issue is that people are doing YouTube for the sake of doing YouTube. Yeah. So, you know, those are some of my thoughts. And like, again, earlier we did the training on YouTube thumbnails. So if you're watching this right now and you came in late, you'll want to watch the replay because we actually, step by step, I broke down what makes a good thumbnail. I showed you guys how to do it in Photoshop. So, yeah. But I also wanted to walk you through some of the Gary Vee thing because I want to give you guys perspective, because there are people who keep talking about quitting YouTube or it's too hard or it's too saturated. And I'm like, to 7 years to get to 10,000 subscribers versus the last 3 added over 1 million subscribers. Like that's the difference between success and people who aren't successful. Is the people who don't, you know, the people who learn and evolve, they don't keep doing it the same way. If you're going to be persistent and you're not going to quit, then you have to also evolve and adapt and change. So that really does become a factor. The Basketball Purist says, I'm currently a young YouTuber and I don't have a camera yet. Wondering what kind of camera I should get and if it's worth it to learn Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro. It's always worth it to learn software. If you want to get a camera right now, get a Canon with a flip screen or get a Panasonic with a flip screen. Ted Time says you have to love what you do because what's the alternative? I think that most people quit YouTube because they're doing content to get big instead of doing content they enjoy doing, because if you do content you enjoy doing, it's easier to be less frustrated by whatever numbers you get. That's what I've done. That's why I don't get frustrated. You would think that I would get frustrated with some of my numbers, but I actually like what I do, so it doesn't bother me that much. It'd be always, of course, nicer to have more numbers, but as long as I'm doing stuff that I enjoy, it doesn't matter to me as much what the numbers turn out to, because it's lucrative enough and my other business ventures are lucrative enough. So I don't have the stress of YouTube ad revenue making or breaking anything in my life. At this point, I'll be very real with you. Well, I don't want YouTube ad money to go away, because I'll be very real with you. At this point, everything that I earn from ad revenue is going to be going toward my quarterly taxes. Yeah. At this point, the IRS can just have it. So the government gets my YouTube ad money at this point. I keep everything else. And that's fine, because it's one of the smaller income streams at this point, comparatively. But yeah, I just, why not turn off ads, Roberto, if you don't care, whatever? Because I can give that money to the government. That's why. So, it doesn't make or break me. So I don't have stress about, did my videos get enough views? Did I make enough ad money this month? I don't stress about that. The other thing is, I don't stress about my view to sub ratio as much, because it's like, well, I'm where I'm at. I'm successful in so many areas. I'm a great, on the rise public speaker now, and have done probably almost 100 speaking engagements. So I'm happy with how things turned out. And beyond YouTube, I'm focusing a lot on my podcast. New episodes dropping this weekend. And so to me, it's like, I'm not obsessed with getting a gold play button. I might feel differently after I get closer to 500,000, because then it's in reach. But I'm like, if I'm a third of the way to a gold play button right now, that doesn't make it real to me yet. And I don't really need it. It'd be awesome, but I don't really need it. I've got enough street cred without it. I think that it would actually start to become problematic to have a gold play button for me, because of the way that I do the business and the way I'm focused on the business. I kind of don't want an influx of young people flocking to my channel because they see I'm a big YouTuber with a gold play button, and then just are there to be there or whatever. And also to be trash in my comments, and not all young YouTubers are like that, but enough of them are from certain communities. And so there are people who really do watch YouTubers just because they're big and for no other reason. And I don't like that. And that's not what I'm about. So there's problems. Now, would I just not go for a gold play button at all because of that? No, that doesn't make sense. From a business standpoint, there is things I could leverage by just having that subscriber count and having a gold play button. The views become irrelevant at that point, because I'm over-indexing on watch time compared to channels that get more views. I get more watch time and I get higher retention rates, which means from an algorithmic perspective, I'm better off. If I increased views, all my stats would go off, so that would be nice. But fundamentally, it almost doesn't matter, because of the views I get that convert to either affiliate sales or direct sales of products, courses, or coaching one-on-one, or to brand deals or hardware sponsorships or to speaking engagements. That does exactly what I needed to do, because all of those people are one person being the right view. And so targeting the micro right view becomes much more important than the scale macro of just having a bigger pool of audience. So I'm playing a different metagame of, well, I'll put it to you like this. Being a successful YouTuber in the eyes of most people comes down to a boxing equivalent of knocking the other guy out. I TKO instead of KO. I get the technical knockout. I get the judge decision in my favor. That's how I win. It's not as cool as just getting the knockout, but a win is a win. But a win is a win. So, I play the long game, and I play the win is the win, and I play the technical part of it, and I do what I love, and I win that way. So that's the game I'm playing, and it's not dissimilar to how Gary did it. It's not dissimilar to how Jared Polin did it. What's my favorite channel in terms of thumbnails right now? Let's actually take a peek and see what comes up in... What does YouTube recommend I watch? Well, YouTube recommends that I watch me. So I like this Roberto Blake guy's thumbnails. I think they're pretty sharp. I like Jared Poland's stuff, obviously. Adobe as a company obviously does great with their thumbnails. As someone that's a friend but also smaller, I think that Front Page Tech, I think that John and Brian have come a long way with their thumbnail game, and I respect it, and I think they're doing like really dope stuff. So definitely want to give them some love there. Most of the photography channels do really good with their thumbnails and their production values, but obvious photographers. You know, a lot of the tech reviewers. Oh, Super Sav TV is probably some of the best tech thumbnails in the game, to be real with you. So I think his stuff, obviously my boy Geekdom 101, but he also either uses screenshots or fan art. I think that his live streams and interviews and stuff could have better thumbnails, and I might actually even like make something custom for him to hook him up because he's a homie. Most of the Star Wars channels do really good on thumbnails. Some do better than others. Star Wars Theory and Star Wars Explained, which is Alex and Molly, they do a good job. I'm getting all this news stuff because Philip DeFranco doesn't, like, he took a week vacation. That's why I'm getting all this news stuff, and it's so annoying because I don't even want to watch most of it. It's just that, what am I going to do while Phil's gone, right? Screen Rant does a good job. The Vlogbrothers do okay. They could do better on thumbnails, though, to be real with you. So yeah, so those are just examples of like stuff that I think is good. I mean, obviously, most of my friends, people like Sean Canal, like most of my homies, do really good with thumbnails. I would expect nothing less. I think Joe Rogan could do better with his thumbnails, but it doesn't have to because he's Joe Rogan. But I mean, I think that, I'll be real with you, I think Joe Rogan's thumbnails come off lazy. But I like Joe Rogan, but his thumbnails come off lazy. So yeah, I think Boogie found a simple format with thumbnails that works for him. So those are examples of, you know, channels with thumbnails that I like or that I think are done well. So Aston Regis, the flip side, says, I used your templates to recreate my thumbnails. Works well. Awesome. Abramax, what about Alpha M or teaching men fashion, like fashion channels? I don't know. I don't watch those. Real Men, Real Style is probably the only one I watch, and I watch it more for the business side and for reverse engineering than anything, so I'm not always paying attention to it. Yep. So anyway, guys, that's it for this live stream because I'm not going to 3 hours, and I've got massive amounts of work to do, and so I'm out. I'm done. But just a reminder, first of all, thank you guys for watching the live stream. Thank you for the awesome questions. Thank you for the people who did Super Chat. You guys are awesome. And also remember to check out awesomecreatoracademy.com. That is my online website and is home of the YouTube Starter Kit. And for those of you who aren't masters of Photoshop, you should get the YouTube Starter Kit so you can make your thumbnails better, increase your click-through rates, and thus grow your YouTube channel because it is important. There is a discount code in the description, so do not miss out on that. I will leave the stream running after I get off for a little bit so you guys can take advantage of the links in the description. And so that's pretty much it for today. I have no idea what next week is going to be or if we do a live stream next week because I might be on the road. For those of you who are going to be at VidCon, I'll be seeing you there. For those of you who are going to be at Social Shakeup in Atlanta, I will see you there in about 2 weeks as well. And I will be traveling a lot for the next 3 months. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm going to tell you, it's exhausting to do that kind of travel because of all the prep work and everything that goes with it. But travel! So that's going to be dope. Guys, once again, thank you for tuning in with me. Thank you for spending almost 3 hours of your day with me. I'm going to get dinner, and I'm going to leave some of this up, like I said, so you guys can get the links in the description. I do really want to stress once again, thumbnails are probably the fastest solution to improving your YouTube channel and your view and subscribers, if that's what you're trying to do, because the branding matters and people are making decisions to click or not when your thumbnail shows up. And now that we have impressions and click-through rates, we know we can't blame it on YouTube. We know it's down to us making thumbnails that are worth clicking. So just want to remind you guys. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and don't forget, go out there and create something awesome today. Take care.